What is gravity?
You have no idea. Okay, next question. This is called gravity. We can describe gravity. We can say what it does to other things. This is called gravity.
Neil, I gotta say, you're totally blowing my mind right now.
That's what I do. I'm Neil deGrasse Tyson, bitch.
What is up, everybody? John the Morale here, coming to you live from Honea Pass, South Kakalaka. It is December the 16th, 2024. Hope y'all are having a wonderful Monday morning. Welcome, good morning, and God bless to you. I've got a few things that we're going to go over today, but as we get started, I'm just going to put the dog cam sport flies to the edge of space. Yeah, there we go. All right. So it's just going to be me flying this thing solo today. No panel members, no guests as of now for this one. And you know what I wanted to do, because it has been a while, is go back to some of the basics on the flat Earth stuff, because the way that I see it is there's always going to be newcomers to this topic. And a lot of times this debate can get so far out into point and counterpoint left field that someone coming, new to this topic might seem overwhelmed or confused, or like, it just might seem all too crazy without understanding where these sort of point, counterpoint, tit for tatting arguments all came from. I'm also going to do a reaction response to a video that I picked from my normal method, which is to YouTube search flat Earth proof, and then pick some globetard nonsense from the first 10 videos. And so this one's a good example of that. And before getting started, I do want to give a shout out to a Zetetic Warrior channel on YouTube. I just the other day saw the first of their streams that I've ever seen of the channel. I have heard the name before, but I just honestly had never had a chance to see any of their work. And, I only bring that up because I YouTube search and Google search, flat Earth proof very frequently, just to sort of see how ridiculous the search results have gotten. Because if you remember, I don't know, 5-10 years ago, YouTube and the search algorithms on Google were pretty good. Like, it doesn't matter if the topic was controversial. Like, if you specifically were looking for information on a topic, you could find good information on that topic just by keying it into the search box, if you believe it, right? But when it comes to certain topics that are controversial or just retarded, like flat Earth is certainly one of those retarded ass topics that nobody believes, they just censor the crap out of it, right? So I don't know. It's a travesty to me that I have never found Zetetic Warrior's work in my many times, searching the internet for flat Earth proof or flat Earth channel streams. Like I do that kind of thing periodically, just to, first of all, when I first started doing that naively, I was trying to find good flat Earth content to, maybe incorporate with, or, get into or whatever. But at a certain point, and I think it was probably around 2017-ish or so, that all went to hell, right? So like, basically you can find tons of misinformation and disinformation and anti-flurfers when you do the old YouTube and Google searches. But, when it comes to, God, do I have audio? Yes, I do. Okay, but when it comes to actually finding good information anymore, it can be very difficult, right? So shout out to Zetetic Warrior and those guys over there. I put a few comments on the one video that I watched, but I'll definitely, definitely subscribe and be checking out more of those guys' work, because it is always nice to find like-minded people in this sort of movement. Because there are a lot of fringies out there, and I think that the fringies get their voices elevated above the sort of sensible voices. I mean, we see that time and time again, right? But what I wanted to get into just a little bit is my sort of personal experience coming into this topic and how I arrived at where I've arrived. And when I see things like the stunt that Jaron and those guys have pulled and are pulling, it really kind of burns me up, because the thing with Jaron is I know that he knows better. And I'm sure that he's going to argue that he was set up for this and all that. Maybe I'm not going to put words in his mouth, but like, he has been shoving away with both hands people that love and respect him, trying to help him avoid this exact kind of thing for years. Okay, for years. And I'm not going to put myself in that category, although you probably could make the case for that. But like, look at Nathan Oakley specifically, right? So like the Nathan Oakley podcast show over there, I mean, they, him and Jaron had a pretty damn heated thing going on back and forth. And finally they did a debate, and Nathan Oakley served Jaron his own ass for breakfast, dude, right? And even then, it's like Jaron still didn't get it. And at that point, I really didn't know there was that beef between those two, between Nathan Oakley and Jaron, right? But when I saw that beef broiling, like, I really did try to kind of be the voice of reason between the two, because I've long considered both of those guys my friends, right? I've known Nathan Oakley longer than I've known Jaron, right? But I've sort of, and I don't know either of these guys personally, right? So let's just be clear about that, okay? Between the two of them, I did meet Jaronism the one time in Denver when we did the 2018 conference, right? I've never met Nathan Oakley in person. So in that respect, whatever that means. But I do consider both of them friends, right? And I have for years. And so when I see friends, especially within this particular movement, when friends are so damn hard to come by, like, I just couldn't understand why, like, they were making such big deals out of points that really weren't points of contention, right? And I can't remember the exact flavor of it, but I know that a lot of it had to do with specifically celestial navigation. Okay, so I don't know, man. Like, I definitely could have seen this going way differently, and long before any of this came to fruition, I suggested, instead of going to the Antarctic to do a solar observation, why don't we try to circumnavigate the periphery, the outside of this AE map, right? Because I think that would be a way better spent, that would be time better spent and resources better spent to actually, let's just go far south of the equator and circumnavigate and just clock the mileage, right? I think that would be way more beneficial for everyone, because, the thing about celestial observations is, the heavens are the realm of the Most High Creator of all things, right? That is a timeless mystery that we humans may never fully understand the mechanisms of the heavens, right? It would have been bad enough if the Most High Creator would have just had all the stars, stationary to one another. That we could probably explain, like, even with the dome in the sky or something like that. But when it comes to the sun and moon having their own sort of circuits, and then the wandering stars having their own independent circuits of the other stars, to my opinion, that is the Most High signature. I mean, yes, we use the sun and the moon to keep time and for seasons and things like that. So there's a reason for it, but it also shows his handiwork. It shows that the Most High Creator of all things is far beyond anything that we can ever comprehend. And so for us human beings to be so pompous as to think that we could actually have an explanation for all things in the heavens is absurd, especially starting from the point that we're all starting, which is in the land of the globetards, right? Where all of our brightest minds have been pigeonholed into this deception that is the globe. And so it's impossible for people to, to really try to figure out what this thing is from the right starting point, right? Because from their starting point, the stars and the wandering stars are, thousands of light years away in the case of the stars, and millions of miles away in the case of the planets, right? The wandering stars, according to them. And so it is only in the realm for NASA to verify these things that are happening in the heavens. And of course, when you catch NASA lying their asses off about everything, starting from the very beginning, you can't really trust anything that they're saying, right? And so when you do just a modicum of research or diligence into NASA, you find their occult origins, you find their literal Nazi origins in the wake of World War II with things like Operation Paperclip. And, NASA isn't this squeaky clean, wholesome organization that everybody was sort of reared and subliminally conditioned into believing, right? And so you just can't trust NASA. And so, with all of that being said, in my opinion, the heavens, yes, you can certainly observe the repeating cycles of the heavens, right? And so there is definitely some science to astronomy and even astrology. And so like you can celestially navigate the world. So there are real world applications to things that are going on in the heavens. But short of one example, which is the shadow of the moon during solar eclipse, we have no way of physically, tangibly measuring or even observing the things that are going on in the heavens. I mean, sure, we can, sit down here and look through telescopes at best. Sure, we can send lying Freemasons to a soundstage to fake space and lie to us. We could do that too. But, in terms of actually figuring out what the hell is going on, not only in the heavens, but also beyond the periphery, we've got a long ways to go. And when I see people that I respect being basically character assassinated by their own sort of arrogance and stupidity, even though these people are typically not that stupid and really not all that arrogant either, it just really makes you scratch your chin and wonder, like, what the fuck is, excuse my language, but what the hell's going on here, man? Like, how does somebody paint themselves into a corner in something as totally unambiguous and obvious as the flat earth, right? Because this is a point that I mentioned, the other day, but one does not become a vocal flat earth proponent, just like on a whim because they think the earth might be flat, right? That's ridiculous. Nobody would ever do that unless they're just crazy or like, I don't know. But you have to go through a sort of internal struggle to even come out the other side of that struggle as a flurfer, right? You don't just wake up one day and decide, I think I might start going and making a case for flat earth, even though I'm not really sure what the hell's going on here. It might be a globe, it might be flat. We really don't have the evidence to know for sure. That isn't what a flat earther is. That's ridiculous. A flat earther is someone that has revisited their long-held core beliefs in this spinning ball earth and have realized that this spinning ball earth narrative is chock full of lies, chock full of these exclusive proofs that turn out to be circumstantial evidence at best that can always be applied to other models, right? And so this airtight, rock solid spinning case for the spinning ball earth that we were sort of led to believe and brainwashed to believe as little kids, if you actually step out of that brainwashing objectively and just for argument's sake begin skeptically revisiting your belief in the ball earth, it really becomes very quickly apparent that it falls apart. And it's not only that it just falls apart, but most of this stuff we knew all along. We just really didn't have the wherewithal to put it in a context that made sense, right? So, like, I'll give you an example, and I'll give you two. The first one is the constellations, and the other one is the what goes up must come down, basically, or like air pressure, or a combination of those. So if I lose my train of thought and I forget what the hell I'm talking about, let me write it down. So the first one is air pressure, and like what goes up must come down. And what was the other one I just said? Fuck, see, I'm already doing it. I'm such a pothead. I'll think of it. What goes up must come down, air pressure, and so these like exclusive claims for the ball Earth that turn out to be, work in either model, right? And there's a lot of these. So like, for example, we'll start with like what goes up must come down, right? So what goes up must come down is not debated, right? If you throw an apple into the air, it's going to come back down. Now, of course, there are exceptions to this rule, right? So you have like helium balloons and smoke from a fire, and you have like clouds of all sorts, like a water evaporating. So what goes up not necessarily must come down, right? So, I mean, I guess even water vapor does eventually come back down after it's a cloud, but, what about helium balloons that are, left up there perpetually? I mean, those necessarily may not ever come down. So there are exceptions to what goes up must come down. But, on the face of it, we all can agree. And with Newton, apples are not going to float up from trees when they're loosed, right? Obviously. But, where we sort of split ways with the globetards is what causes this. Now, the globetards will tell you that the Earth is a spinning ball, obviously, everybody knows this. But what causes what goes up must come down is this thing called gravity. The theory of gravity causes it. And we all know gravity is true because, again, apples don't float up from trees, right? So what goes up must come down is a thing that happens in reality. And we have the theory of gravity to explain it, assuming, of course, that the Earth is this spinning ball in space, right? So we start with the assumption that your ass is racing east right now about 1,000 miles an hour at the equator. Certainly supersonically, here in South Carolina where I am, phasing up to the point of half the speed as a 12-hour hand on a clock. Half the speed as the hour hand on a 12-hour clock. Up to the North Pole, right? So that spinning ball Earth varies in your speed, your velocity of spinning, depending on your latitude, right? But in order for what goes up must come down to even hypothetically sort of work on this spinning ball, then you would definitely need something like gravity, right? You would have to have something to cause these loose objects to fall back down, right? So in that sense, gravity is an integral necessity of the spinning ball Earth theory. Okay. Now, of course, from a sort of flat Earth perspective, the theory of gravity is nonsensical, absurd, and unnecessary because the Earth is a stationary plane, demonstrably so, right? So if the Earth doesn't have curvature and it's also demonstrably not spinning, we can get into that. But if that's true, then there is no theoretical need for something like gravity, right? Gravity is a phantom that was birthed from the globe Earth theory and nothing more. And so when you realize like there has never been any sort of experimental proof of gravity, and in fact, like you really can't demonstrate gravity at all, right? Because the thing with gravity is, yeah, they say it's a warping of space-time, another theory. Space-time is another theory. The meshing together of physical space and non-physical conceptual time, right? The meshing of these two things together, which the twain never really truly will meet, will they? But this space-time theory is sort of pushed out of its natural rectilinear state by these large spheres, right? And these large spheres cause the space-time warp to cause an acceleration towards the center of that that sphere, right? That's the theory of gravity. That's Einsteinian gravity, right? But if the Earth doesn't have the curvature necessary to result in an overall sphere, and it's also at rest demonstrably, then it couldn't be a spinning sphere of any sort. And this necessity, this theoretical necessity for gravity goes right out the window, okay? And in fact, we see these entities like LIGO taking a page right out of NASA's playbook and basically faking experimental evidence for gravity, right? And I'm not going to roll that clip here. I probably should have queued that up, but it was a huge thing. Like the LIGO came and made these big press conferences claiming that they had proven gravity waves. They had proven the existence of black holes. They had gotten, these readings, which was a blip on a chart of their interferometer devices. And that blip on a chart led them to believe that they had received evidence of a gravity wave that was 1.3 billion years old, thusly traveling through space from 1.3 billion light years away from this binary system of two black holes that allegedly came together and formed a single singularity, right? So that was their shtick. They said they had finally come up with proof for gravity waves, right? Now, of course, this was in the face of flat Earth becoming pretty mainstream at that time, right? This was before the whole purge thing, and really before YouTube entirely changed its entire algorithm to help cover up flat Earth for whatever reason. But it turns out that LIGO was just lying. Like even their own people, even people that would normally be agreeing with them, clearly proved that they were merely finding patterns in the background noise, and it was just all bullshit. Okay. And it's not a big surprise either, because again, from where I'm sitting, gravity could not possibly exist. There's no theoretical need for it to exist. Right. Now, that isn't to say that apples are now going to start floating up from trees, right? So don't misunderstand what I'm saying when I say that, right? But so this concept of what goes up must come down being exclusive proof of the Earth being a spinning ball is a perfect microcosm of this sort of cognitive dissonance run amok in people's psyche since they were toddlers, right? Because that's basically what it is. So like what I mean is what goes up must come down is sort of like the last thing you would ever expect if you were, stuck to the side of a spinning ball, right? So like imagine yourself standing perpendicular to the axis of the spinning ball, right? So like you're riding the gravitron at the fair, and then you somehow climb out the gravitron over the edge and then stand on the outside edge of the gravitron somehow, right? And so the last thing you would ever expect while you're standing on the outside edge of the gravitron is for, if you throw an apple up, away from the axis, that apple's going to come right back down towards you. Like that's pretty absurd. It's the last thing you would expect if you were stuck to the side of a spinning anything, right? But somehow or another, the Globetards have turned that nothing burger of the worst kind into exclusive proof of the spinning ball. And this is what happens when you let cognitive dissonance run amok in our minds since we were toddlers, right? And so, I really do, I thank God, thank the Most High, the Creator, and the angels of revelation that, we're living through this time of revelation, because from my research tells me this deception has been going on for probably like 500 years. I mean, maybe shorter than that, but it seems like it's about 500 years. So, that's like generation after generation. That's a lot of people deceived by this. And I think it's reached sort of a fever pitch in our generation, like, with the advent of NASA and the Apollo missions and things like that. And, of course, the American people were psychologically primed for this great deception, for many, many years leading up to the advent of Nazi and occult NASA shenanigans, right? So like look at the War of the Worlds radio hoax from the 40s. I mean, there's a lot of these sort of instances where they were definitely predictive programming people to be prepared for spacefair, right? NASA shenanigans. Now, so here's another one of these sort of things. So I said I was going to mention two, and there's a lot of other ones too. But the other one, so where I remember when I was going to school, it was probably, public school, it was probably middle school or maybe high school. I think it was middle school. I was in all the stupid gifted and AP classes. But one of the things that we were learning in science class was that, so like they claim that a big part of your weight on a scale is due to barometric pressure, right? And so the way that it was described to me in science class, now I'm not making this claim, this was their claim. And you know, if I'm misrepresenting it, it's because my science teacher must have misrepresented it to me, right? So I don't know what the case is, but I remember in science class that I was told that there was a column of air, you know, reaching all the way up to basically the fucking Kármán line or something. I don't know. But that column of air is pushing down on you. And that's, you know, if that air was suddenly, you know, if we suddenly were in a vacuum, basically, you know, your body would explode, but you would also, I don't know, like, I don't know what the, you know, what that is. But I do remember that I asked my teacher, so, but like, what about gravity, right? Isn't that also giving us at least some of our weight on the scale? And, you know, kind of a dead darkness went over the teacher's eyes because I guess she had never thought about it that way. I don't know. And I was sort of reprimanded and we moved on and that was that. But, you know, there are there are so many of these examples where physical impossibilities that make no sense on the spinning ball Earth sort of Copernican model are somehow morphed into exclusive proofs of that very thing, right? So like what goes up must come down, air pressure, because, you know, you can't have air pressure without some kind of a containment, right? So now I'm not going so far as to say that we live in an enclosed dome in the sky system. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is this whole shtick about infinite space and the vacuum of space is nonsense, which is demonstrated by the fact that we have air pressure here on the ground in reality. The heliocentric Copernican model has the spinning ball Earth in the void and vacuum of space with air pressure and nothing separating these two areas. So a very high vacuum of 7 torr, -7 torr, I don't know, many torr, much higher than any sort of vacuum that we can recreate here on Earth, except maybe the Lyernauts at NASA can come close, but even they can't get to where infinite space is claimed to be, right? And the simple fact of the matter is you cannot have that. That doesn't comport with reality. It breaks all the known laws of physics, fluid dynamics, thermodynamics, all that. And so we can safely deduce just by that one thing alone that the standard heliocentric model is total bullcrap. Because of the fact that standing water in all directions never has any curvature that would be a very specific amount, because that curvature doesn't exist, then the Earth couldn't possibly be a ball. And beyond that, you know, the spinning ball Earth is traveling in multiple curvilinear directions along orbital trajectories at speeds so fast you just can't even imagine how fast they are. I mean, I can tell you the numbers, but it's just unimaginably fast in conflicting curvilinear trajectories. And these trajectories are constantly changing phase with one another. It would be one hell of a roller coaster ride, this spinning ball Earth. And, it would be measurable, is what I'm saying. This sort of accelerations that are hard boiled into traveling along a curvilinear path, these trajectories produce centrifugal force that's measurable. And yet no single shred of evidence has ever been measured or documented or observed to lead anyone to believe that this sort of motion, this orbital motion, is going on in conjunction with axial rotation, right? There is no evidence for that. And in fact, the Earth is unarguably a perfectly fixed frame of reference. Okay. Now, you just cannot have a spinning, orbiting, flying through space ball behave as a fixed frame of reference. So like each one of these things that I'm just sort of mentioning and running through real quick, every one of these things are independently enough to totally debunk the heliocentric model. When you put the preponderance of evidence together, it is so obvious. Like, honestly, it is amazing that they got everyone to fall for this. But not really, though. Not really, because they got us when we were young, trusting, and incapable of defending ourselves against the Santa Claus story that is the spinning ball Earth. Like, honestly, the spinning ball Earth narrative, in my opinion, is more absurd than Santa Claus. You know, because at least there is such thing as a red dude, you know, in a fat red dude in a suit with a white beard. I mean, it's not that far off from, you know, sure, the story about him, you know, flying to every household down the chimney and giving presents is pretty far fetched. But, you know, I would say equally so is this idea of your ass going east at 1,000 miles an hour along a curve right now, while traveling, you know, like that way at 60,000 miles an hour along another curve, while traveling this way, you know, at 1,000,000 miles an hour with the sun around it. I mean, it is so absurd. And, you know, the apologetics for these sort of physical impossibilities on the globe Earth are astonishing, because people that are intelligent, well-rounded, well-educated people are just incapable of seeing how absurd this is, because the implications are too far beyond the pale of what is acceptable according to their paradigm, right? So, like, the implications are that you've been wrong about everything. You know, your science teacher was wrong, NASA's lying, the government's basically lying to us about this. I mean, it is, you know, people that worship the state, which is a consequence of giving the federal government your children for the formative years of their life. But these children grow up worshiping the state and seeing the state as their parental figure. It's inevitable, right? And so when you have so many people worshiping the state, um, it is almost impossible for them to even go there, hypothetically, if only for argument's sake, because it's just too damn mind blowing, I guess. Um, but then, you know, you also have a different breed. You have the anti-flat earthers, right? So people that have been, you know, allegedly studying this topic deeply for years, right? But are still somehow unable to see the validity of these arguments, which to me is pretty astonishing, but not entirely out of the question. I mean, I do know how deep that programming goes, right? And I don't know. I mean, I think maybe some people didn't do enough acid in their teenage years. I don't know, man. I don't know. Maybe they didn't do enough shrooms in their teenage years, something like that. I don't know. Okay. And again, I'm not condoning hallucinogens, but honestly, like, if you haven't had a psychedelic experience in your life, I'm not like dogging you or anything, but it is kind of hard to get outside of yourself and look at things from a perspective that isn't from me centric, right? And I know maybe there's people that can get there with meditation and things like that. More power to you. Again, I'm not advocating for hallucinogens, but I can see where maybe some people would just dwell within that state of cognitive dissonance. And when you have this sort of echo chamber that YouTube has become en masse for the globe, um, I guess I can kind of see it, man. I guess I can kind of see it. But then you have these other people that are just obviously working for someone in order to discredit flat earthers and try to score points in the public eye for the globe. And if you don't think that there's a lot of money involved to try to keep the globe earth deception going, and if you don't think that they would try to buy off prominent flat earthers, I don't know, man. I would have to say I disagree with you, but that's a pretty normie way to look at things for a flirter. I don't know. So I guess I found out. So Candace Owens did not go to Antarctica. She sent her producer. But I have this feeling that Candace Owens is going to start shilling for the globe. And if she does, I personally will know why. And it's not because the Earth is a globe. Okay. But we're not going to go there just yet. This is not the point of this video. let's talk about the Coriolis effect, because the Coriolis effect is another one of these things that's presented to us as proof of the globe, right? So, like, they say that hurricanes in the northern hemisphere spin in one direction, and then the typhoons in the southern hemisphere spin in the opposite direction. And they claim that this is due to the Coriolis effect. Now, the Coriolis effect is a real characteristics of spinning bodies as a fixed frame of reference. So the Coriolis effect is a real thing. Okay, but I would argue that it is not the cause of the counter rotation of cyclonic forces, right? Fluid dynamics has a very simple and obvious explanation for the counter rotation of cyclonic forces depending on their northness or southness of the path of the sun. Okay, like if you cup a hand and run it through water, or if like you've ever been canoeing and you run a canoe oar through the water, you'll notice there's the two, eddies that come off of the cup. And basically that's the exact same thing that's going on with hurricanes and typhoons. You have the sun and the moon, which are basically heating things up as they go around and then cooling things back down. And so they're expanding and contracting the atmosphere plane, in their wake, and that causes a perturbance in the atmosphere plane in the wake of the sun and the moon. And so you get this sort of counter rotational forces, either north or south of the path of the sun, which is not adherent to the equator as it strictly sort of should be if the Earth was a globe, but it actually does sort of bounce back and forth between the tropics. That dividing line does anyway. And, of course, there are instances of hurricanes and typhoons not spinning the correct direction based on their hemisphere. So, it isn't a hard and fast rule exactly either, which that is the case with fluid dynamics as well. And, of course, the atmosphere plane behaves as a fluid on the macro level. So it makes perfect sense. Okay. Now, the other thing is, so the globe earthers, they like to cherry pick things and ignore the very same things when it's convenient or inconvenient to their narrative. So the Coriolis effect, in terms of, what it is, basically, if I had to describe the Coriolis effect in a sentence, it would be that objects adherent to a rotational frame of reference will not remain adherent to said rotational frame of reference unless they are firmly attached to the primary rotating body, right? So like if you're on a merry-go-round and you throw a ball across it to your friend, it's going to apparently curve because it stops spinning around that axis as soon as you throw it. That's how spinning bodies as a fixed frame of reference work. That's the Coriolis effect in a nutshell. Neil deGrasse Tyson said that it was applied to field goal kicks, right? So he said the Coriolis effect had such a profound effect on a field goal kick, it caused it to hit the pole and go in, right? He bragged about how smart he was because he did the math on that, right? But the thing is so if that applies to field goals being kicked, why doesn't it apply to airplanes or like artillery or sniper shots, right? And so the Globers they'll say, well, snipers do figure in the Coriolis effect. See, it says Coriolis effect right here in the sniper's handbook. But if you actually read the sniper's handbook, it's kind of funny because it doesn't really behave as you would expect it to behave on a spinning ball Earth. So what I mean by that is if you actually read the sniper's handbook, the Coriolis effect is figured in this way. It's going to cause the shot to deviate to the right a bit in the northern hemisphere plane, right? Doesn't matter which direction you're shooting. So you could be shooting north, south, east, west. There is a different set of plugins to use depending on your latitude, according to them. Okay, but the thing is if you're stuck to the side of a spinning ball and you shoot north, right, and you're going to the east, right? That's going to have a totally different effect on that projectile than if you shoot it west, right? I mean, obviously, you can't use the same formula no matter which direction you're shooting, if we're talking about the Coriolis effect applying to the spinning ball, no, the Coriolis effect is applying to the projectile as the rotational frame of reference. Okay. And I think the nail in the coffin for this whole Coriolis effect thing causing the rotation, the counter rotation of cyclones is so, okay, if the Coriolis effect, does this to cyclones and it does this to field goal kicks, well, what about airplane flights? Because, this is another one of those things. When I was a kid, I took my first flight. I was probably 10 years old, 9, something like that. I don't know. And, it was a two-way flight. I had a return ticket on my way there. And so once I got past the sort of jitters of being up in the sky and looking out the window, you start to get a little bored. And I was curious. I was like, I wonder how much longer the flight home's going to be, because we're going west from Florida to Texas. And so obviously Texas is doing half the work for the plane right now. I wonder how much longer it's going to take to get home. I'm like, God, I bet it's going to be twice as long. And I was really kind of shocked when I realized that, no, the two flights were identical in duration. And I even kind of double checked, was I making a mistake because there is a time zone change? Maybe I was losing an hour or something. No, the two flights were the same. And so when I landed in Texas, I even told my aunt, I was like, hey, I just figured out the earth isn't spinning. Look, and I explained it to her. And basically, she kind of got red in the face and said that I don't understand physics, that I didn't get it. Basically, the plane is spinning with the Earth prior to takeoff, and so the plane remains spinning with the Earth after it takes off and starts heading west. That was the sort of explanation that was given to me by my aunt then. And I kind of made the case for it to my dad when I got home, but my heart wasn't really in it because I had already been really kind of shot down by my aunt. And my dad shot me down too, told me I didn't understand physics. And that was pretty much that. But, this is what I'm saying. Like, so there are a lot of examples. The other thing I mentioned now I know was the constellation. So I'll give you even one more. In the heliocentric model, the stars are all disparate in terms of their distance from us, according to the heliocentric model. So like you might be looking at a single constellation, right? But the stars in that constellation, one of them may be 5 light years away, according to them. And another star right next to it, according to your point of view, that other star might be 1,000 light years away or 500. So, the proximity of these stars is only apparent according to our position. And this is all based on the heliocentric model. So like, according to this model, the planet Earth has been flying through space with the galaxy and around the galaxy, through the cosmos for all of recorded history. And, there has never been any sort of major stellar parallax that you would expect to see if what they're saying is true. If we're really traveling through space and these stars are all, not equidistant from us, you should have the closer stars, relatively speaking, moving faster, relative to the ones that are more distant. And yet the constellations are still exactly the same as they were when they were developed by the ancients, right? So the fact that the constellations have never changed, I'm just being honest with myself at this point. This was something that never sat well with me. It was always one of those things that I would just think about. It would keep me up at night thinking about this crap. As a kid, man, just thinking about, wow, how is this how are the constellations? I mean, yeah, I understand they're supposedly far away, and so you wouldn't have any real apparent parallax. But over time, you would definitely have measurable parallax. And so it's another one of those things that never really sat well with me. And, and again, this whole flat Earth thing is just so far beyond the pale of what is rationally possible, according to us, according to everything that we know to be true, right? And so, like, honestly, I think it's a bit of a miracle that we're even having this conversation in the public realm. And so for that, I am very grateful. But there are very powerful and rich entities with a vested interest in the globe. And I'm not going to say that I'm cheap, But you know, if you want to offer me millions of dollars, I'll take a shit on flat Earth too. No, I probably won't though. Honestly, I probably wouldn't do that. Um, and you know, I like to think that Jaron wouldn't either. I mean, like I said, Jaron, I've had a lot of respect for in the past, but when I saw the way that he treated Nathan Oakley, when I'm certain that Nathan was really trying to help him, and Nathan is a bit snarky at times, but like the way that he shoved Nathan Oakley away with both hands, that was like the first time I kind of saw a side of Jaron that really made me kind of sick to my stomach. Now, granted, and I'll be real honest with you guys, I never really followed Jaron's stuff outside of the Flurfer videos that he's done. So like I never really was big into watching his live streams. And so if there were a lot of things that I missed or I'm just ignorant of, it's because that I'm just not real into watching Jaronism's live streams. I tried to get into him a couple times, but he was just like basically Christian bashing the whole time, and I couldn't watch it. Okay. So, you know, I get it, but um I don't know, man. With the way that he treated Nathan and then got his ass handed to him and still was in denial, that's just not the Jaron I know. Like honestly, and I'm not going to make any claims here, but in my opinion, I would not be surprised at all if Jaron was compromised at some point along the way. And there's a lot of shit that I can tell you guys, but I'm not going to do that at this point. There's a lot. Okay, but I really kind of want to see how this all plays out. But I mean, dude, I called it. I mean, who didn't see this coming? I mean, I guess there were a lot of naive flurfers who thought because certain flurfers have been drumming it into their minds that, setting sun in Antarctica is a sure thing, during the summer solstice down there. And, 24-hour sun in Antarctica proves the globe, right? Whoever, like the fact that Jaron has been basically saying that exact thing recently is so suspicious to me, dude. So suspicious, because I know for a fact that he knows better than that. I mean, he even coined the phrase personal atmospheric dome, right? Which, I know where he gets that from. It makes a lot of sense. The teacups, upturned teacups on a basketball court with liquid in them, observing from within those, and you see a light go over the basketball court, you'd see something like a rising and setting sun, right? And so the personal atmospheric dome makes perfect sense. Okay. The fact that the sun and the celestial lights are subjective instances is perfectly sensible. We're not dealing necessarily with physical objects in the sky, unfortunately. In my opinion, I would be very surprised if the sun and the moon and the stars are actually physical objects. I believe that when we're dealing with the heavens, we are dealing with something akin to a higher dimension. Okay. And so if you remember Carl Sagan's Cosmos book, one of the things that stuck with me in that book when I was a kid was the flatland analogy. And while this doesn't directly pertain to flat Earth, it certainly does pertain to flat Earth in this instance that I'm giving you. Okay. So the flatland analogy in Carl Sagan's Cosmos is basically describing what it would be like to live in a lower dimension in order to juxtapose that analogy to a higher dimension. Okay. So that we can kind of get an understanding of what a higher dimension might entail. Right. So according to this analogy, I think it's a brilliant analogy. So you've got a little two-dimensional thing, and so you're basically, if you're living in a two-dimension, you're living within this sheet of paper. So there is no up and down, right? There's only forward, back, left, and right. That's it. Okay. So like anything that you approach that's bigger than you is just going to look like a line in front of you, right? So whether it's a circular shape or a square shape or a triangle, you might can kind of make out what it is based on perspective, living there in 2D land and flat land. But until you walk around a thing and take measurements of it, you have no concept of up or down. You have no concept of what the overall shape is until you go around the thing and measure it and see what it is for yourself. Okay. So that's flatland. Now, if, say, an apple was to pass through flatland, the little inhabitants of Flatland wouldn't know that it was an apple. They would just see like a series of lines. Like they would just see a line that gets a little bigger. You know, as the apple passed through, it's going to get to the widest point, and then that line would get smaller towards the top, and then there'd be a little, you know, little indication of the core to the stem or whatever. And then they'd be like, well, what the hell was that? How can we go around this? It's gone. Like what? They would never know that it was an apple, right? And so that apple obviously represents a third dimensional object. So, take this analogy of Flatland and sort of think about what would a higher dimensional object entail to we little observers that are bound within the third dimension. So we only have concepts of forward, back, left, right, and up and down. And I don't, you know, I mean, sure, you have combinations of those directions, but we are not hard coded to understand higher dimensions because we are bound within the third dimension. Okay. Now, perhaps when we're in dream state or when we're dead, we, you know, get to understand what higher dimensions are. Maybe we can catch glimpses or see shadows of third dimensional objects. So, like maybe the mystery of the heavens, fourth dimensional, maybe the mystery of the heavens has to do with the fact that we are simply incapable from being bound within our third dimensional perspective to understand the grandiose mysteries of the Most High Creator of all things. And I think that it is the height of arrogance and ignorance to try to put people's feet to the fire to have an explanation for all things in the heavens. Because, you know, the thing about the globe Earth is they just made a bunch of shit up and put it in the textbooks for us to gobble up and regurgitate, right? But if you actually check the premises of the globe Earth, the whole damn thing falls apart, right? So, you know, the globe Earthers saying that we flat Earthers don't even have a model. It doesn't matter. You don't need a model to prove that the Earth is a stationary plane. Now, it would be nice to have cogent explanations of the heavens. And, you know, if you really want us to make shit up and put it in textbooks, there's plenty of flat earthers that will do that. I mean, if you look at the wealth of garbage that's just shoved down our throats on YouTube, there's a lot of just absolute nonsense posing as flat earth information, just grandiose claims that have no backing to them in order to make the person money and make flat earth look stupid, right? But I don't know. I've kind of got off on a tangent here, but there's others. You know, there's others of these things that that I'm mentioning. These sort of exclusive proofs of the globe that turn out to either work in other scenarios or just fall apart under rational scrutiny. We have this portion of the curriculum, the federal indoctrination curriculum, that is involving teaching us as children how fucking stupid you had to be to question the globe. Like, they literally make fun of all people prior to believing in the globe. Like, that is a stupid, archaic belief. Those people didn't know diddly. We are so much smarter than them because now we know, you know, that the earth is a spinning ball. And so this sort of arrogance is hard boiled into us at a very young age to where it's almost a heresy to humor flat earth as even just a hypothesis for argument's sake, right? And obviously that is the very opposite of a scientific sort of mind, right? Refusing to consider hypothesis is the opposite of science. Science is testing hypothesis in order to glean cause and effect relationships between naturally occurring phenomenon and potential causes that you're going to test. But to simply refuse to test a hypothesis is the definition of ignorance and the opposite of science. Okay. So anyone that says that flurfers are anti-scientific just doesn't understand. That just doesn't know what they're talking about. And, you know, I give most people a pass. You know what I mean? Most people got to understand I was raised on planet Earth too. Like, I know exactly what the programming is all about. And I know that, like, I myself am guilty of this. When I first was introduced to this topic, I thought it was the stupidest damn thing I'd ever heard of, you know. But then I looked into it specifically to debunk it, and I was shocked to find that, being honest with myself, I could not in good faith debunk flat Earth without delving way deeper into it, and more importantly, delving way deeper into my beliefs in the globe, right? So my best advice to anyone that is new to this topic and considering it, but you're having a tough time with it, forget about flat Earth just for a little while and revisit the globe, because that's where the pay dirt is. The globe falls apart when you just question it a bit, because the globe is a fucking liar, dude. And in that same vein of teaching us when we were little kids how stupid you had to be a flat earther in history, they even did one worse in the higher education, right? So I don't think they necessarily have college courses teaching you about how stupid flat earthers were, right? But they definitely did lie by omission to the college students that were specializing in physics and theoretical physics, right? So specifically, I'm talking about Airy's failure, right? This was a huge thing that, George Airy was trying to, prove the speed of the Earth through space and through the ether, and concluded that the Earth was at rest based on, his experiments. You can look into Airy's failure if you're interested. There's tons of information on it. But the fact that that is not taught to students that are, specializing, majoring in physics, but Einstein is shoved down their throat, ought to tell you something about higher education. Okay. But so, you have that multi-pronged attack on us in the educational system, starting when we're young, and even, finishing us off like a fucking fatality in Mortal Kombat when we're, in higher education. And that's a travesty, man, because, people put so much stock in the state and these educational institutions, but hopefully not for much longer. I mean, it's just a money-making racket. I mean, I ruined my damn credit on federal student loans when I was 17. I got federal student loans when I was 17, and long story short, it's still fucked up my credit to this day. Like, I'm still not out of the woods with that. I could probably, take steps to, deal with those crazy federal government people, but, whatever. I don't know, man. But, we mentioned the lack of stellar parallax a minute ago. So back to that sort of a vein. The stationary nature of Polaris is another huge one. Total debunker of the entire heliocentric model. And that's because of things like the alleged axial precession of the alleged axis of rotation. Supposedly goes through this 26,000 year wobble cycle, the axial precession of the globe. Polaris has been observably in the same spot above, it aligned to the axis for all of recorded history. Okay. And frankly, if if the globe was true and axial precession was true, then you wouldn't have a North Star for anything longer than a decade, or like maybe 100 years at the most, right? We're talking about 1 degree of precession every 72 years, right? So we're talking about a half a degree in 36 years and a quarter of a degree of precession in just 18 years, right? Have y'all noticed Polaris going out of whack with the axis in the last 18 years? Because it hasn't. Polaris is right where it was the day that you were born, and it's right where it was the day that the ancient Romans were calling it stellar Polaris, okay? So, I mean, there's another one. And there's another one that didn't sit well with me when I was a kid, right? But then, they have apologetics that like, oh, well, there used to be a different North Star and there's going to be a different North Star in the future. So they do claim that, right? Because of the axial precession thing. But in terms of, it's not just clicking 1 degree every 72 years or 10 degrees every 720 years, right? Click, click. No, it's not like that. It's supposedly axially processing through that at a constant phase. So, you know, another globe killer is the fact that Polaris is aligned to the axis, right? The fact that, we're watching this dog cam footage, the fact that the horizon line doesn't, perspective still appears to operate properly at 100,000 feet, which is just not possible on the ball, right? You have this sort of infinite horizon effect. No matter how high you go, the horizon remains about at eye level, which is just not compatible with the ball. I mean, there are so many things wrong with the damn ball, but we flat earthers are still looking for proof. We just need a final experiment to really prove that this thing's flat. So let's go to Antarctica and make a bunch of positive claims about the sun that no diligent flat earther is making, except for possibly Jaron and Whitsitt. I don't know. But I do know that Jeranism knows better than this, knew better than this, and I just don't see him as being stupid enough to paint himself into the corner that he painted himself in. And, Jaron, brother, if you watch this, I love you, man. But what, dude? I don't know what to make of this, man. Again, for us to explain the mechanisms of all things in the heavens is not necessary to prove this thing. We don't need a working model because, well, for starters, the globetards don't have a working model. Look at the, there's just so many problems. Watch my videos for the last 10 years. If you're familiar with my channel, you know the problems with the heliocentric model. And so totally independent of flat earth and any model that's going on over here, independent of that, the globe is dead, right? You don't have to be a flat earther to be a globe earth skeptic. You don't have to be a flat earther to realize that NASA's lying. And by the way, you don't have to subscribe to a model to be a flat earther. Measure the damn Earth for curvature. Measure the damn Earth for axial rotation and hypersonic orbital motion, right? And I'll give you a hint. It's real easy calculations because the answer to both of those things is 0. There is no curvature. It doesn't exist. And the Earth is demonstrably at rest. It isn't even argued by the globetards. All of that orbital motion and axial rotation is theoretical. And, again, it falls apart under the slightest inkling of rational scrutiny. And, anybody that's honest with themselves has known this their whole life. We all knew that the heliocentric model was bullshit. I actually remember the first time my dad told me that, sat me down and showed me the globe on the table and said, that's where we live. I was really young. And I thought, even then, I remember being incredulous then. And I even remember now that my grandfather indeed tried to tell me. My grandfather was a military man. He was in World War II. And when he retired from the Army, he was going to end up becoming a general, but he had disagreements with the Vietnam War. And so he got out, retired, and ended up becoming chief engineer for HUD. Okay. Now, when he was working with HUD and before then, he did a lot of things with weather balloons, and he was a civil engineer, and so and working with the government, he had access to a lot of equipment and things like that, I'm sure. And when I was very young, he took me to his house and showed me a bunch of slides and told me that the Earth was flat and NASA was lying. He did, and he told me not to tell my dad, but I went home and told my dad, and my dad cussed his ass out and told him off, and I totally mentally blocked this whole thing for years. Now, I did remember the slideshow that he had showed me. That stuck with me for all these years. I've talked about, Papu doing slideshows, and he told me all kinds of things, and I remember being incredulous with him. I was like, yeah, but we went to the moon, and my dad said we live on a globe, and I think he kind of got frustrated with the whole thing, and I think he felt bad because I believe he had maybe participated somehow in the deception. I don't know. He didn't say as much, but he figured it out. Papu was not a dummy, and he did tell me, and I mentally blocked it out. Right. I've mentioned this one time before on stream, but what a crazy thing, man. He did have the integrity to at least try to tell somebody. A lot of those guys, especially from that era, took those oaths of silence very, very seriously, right? So I'm going to check in on you guys in the chat, and then I'm going to react to one of these videos. And I lost my coffee. Damn, I got to go get my coffee. So I've got some videos that I'm going to react to with you guys. There's two. So just sit tight. I will be white black. I got to go find my coffee. Sorry. Oh, there's my cup. It's empty. I drank it. Oh. All right, all right, all right. I'm gonna check in on you guys in the chat, make sure like my head didn't fall off or something. Yeah. PJ says no curve radius disproved. That brings every distance into question. Yeah. Hangry Hippo says an oath of silence to keep the flat Earth a secret. An oath of silence. No. Well, potentially, yeah. Potentially, I mean, yeah. I mean, so in the military, they will do things called debriefing, right? And so once you've had an experience that is of a sensitive nature, the military will tell you things that you saw, things that you did not see, and things that you did not see that you will never talk about, or else they will kill your family, type of shit, right? Maybe not in those words, but certain things are implied, right? Or like they'll put you in the brig, you'll get court-martialed, whatever. And if you're a career military man, that's a pretty big threat. So yeah, no, I mean, they figured it out, right? So somebody that has access to things like high altitude weather balloons and cameras and isn't an idiot can very quickly realize that the Earth is a stationary plane, and we were definitely lied to by the likes of NASA. So yeah, they figured it out. And I think that he probably tried to tell his kids. Maybe I think he probably tried to tell my dad. I imagine that my dad probably told him to never bring that shit up to me, which is why Papu told me, don't tell your dad. I remember him saying that, and I told him I wouldn't. But then the first thing I did when I came home, I'm like, Papu, dad, dad, Papu said, da, da, da. But it's because I was excited about it. And what's funny, when I did that first airline flight, I had totally blocked that shit out then. I mean, it had been years later, right? So I took my first flight, I was probably 9 or 10, and Papu, it was when they still lived in Virginia. And so I was probably about 8, something like that, when he took me up there. Must have been 7. It was before I came to Florida, actually, I think. So I was like 6 or 7 when Papu told me that. Right. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, but yeah, those military men of that era took their vows of silence way more seriously than people do today. Like, I think it's kind of a given that military dudes tell their wives a lot of shit that's supposed to be classified. I don't know, maybe a lot of them don't. I don't know. But like back then, dude, it was like your buddies would fucking give you a damn sock party if they found out you were like, I don't know, loose lips sink ships, right? You ever heard the old expression? I don't know. So you guys are still arguing about the Tesla in space? Yeah, even Elon Musk said that they didn't use any sort of special materials. It's just a regular Tesla they put in orbit, right? But yeah, the thing is absolutely. Tires here on Earth rely on the ambient back pressure of the atmosphere. It's 14.7 pounds of pressure per square inch on every square inch of that tire on the outside pushing it. So yeah, if you were to put that in a vacuum chamber, it would definitely explode. You know, a thing like that, the seals wouldn't work properly. It would, you can't. The fact that what's his name, Elon Musk, even said he goes, well, there wasn't any special materials. It's just a normal Tesla up there, or something to that effect, paraphrasing. Then that proves that it's fake. I mean, not necessarily that he's lying. I reserve the possibility that Elon Musk still is a globetrot, right? And they're still lying to him and you know, taking his money or keeping him rich. I don't know. I don't know, man. I leave. You know, you can't really go and call people a deceiver without proof. And I just think that Elon Musk is so disconnected from the actual hands-on work of what's going on in his businesses. Sure, he carries the sinks in. Sure, he does all that. I mean, he is the number one sink carrier inner every time, you know. But other than that, I just find it I find it possible, at least, that he has absolutely no clue. Maybe he does. And maybe when we see a Trump presidency, we're going to see flat Earth come out in the mainstream. I don't know. I'm not going to hold my breath because, see, while I am glad that Trump won the election over Kamala, honestly, I would have much preferred Vladimir Putin as our president. And that's, you know, that he wouldn't even be my first choice. Okay. But I'm not a big fan of Trump, never have been. You know, the fact that he is talking about nixing the Department of Education is a good sign. But if they keep on faking space and dumping billions into NASA and the Space Force and all that, what's the point, right? If they're going to continue shoving globe Earth nonsense and evolution theory down our children's throat ad nauseum forever into the future, what was the point? You know, if the beast system that is responsible for these lies and, you know, these situations like we've got going on with Diddy, uh, if the beast system is responsible for that, why the hell would we do anything but get rid of it? Well, no, what I'm saying is if I had to choose between Putin as president of the United States, if the only choices were Kamala Harris, Trump, and Putin, dude, I'm sorry, bro. I'm voting for Putin, man. I'm sorry. That's just me. But like I said, he wouldn't be my first choice. Okay, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying like Putin's my first choice for president. What I'm saying is, okay, let me rephrase that. If the choice for president was between Kamala Harris, Donald Trump, and a ham sandwich, I'm voting for the ham sandwich. Okay. So I'm not like pro Putin or anything, but I've watched enough of his you know, enough of his speeches and enough of his actions to know that I think he's kind of a real dude, right? But it was more hyperbole and a joke than anything. Don't deflect to the tires. Oh, the green screen frame, yeah. So Unsalted 667 says Elon's kids will all be in the next generation of WEFs, young world leaders or whatever. Yeah. Um, you know, the first Trump presidency was something. I think maybe we're going to see some big good things. I have faith. Like, I still have faith that God, the Most High Creator, can move people to change, right? Maybe some people can never change. I also believe that. Like, some people are just screwed, right? But I also believe that the Most High can move through people to change. So I do hope and pray, I pray that Donald Trump has a successful presidency by all metrics for the American people. I pray that he doesn't stop with nixing the Department of Education. And I pray that he continues right on down that nixing departments with, NASA, the CIA, the Federal Reserve, which is not a federal department. It is a non-federal, non-reserve holding, non-bank. It is a scam, and that's got to go too. And when you get rid of that, you can get rid of the fucking IRS too. And I'll tell you what, just those 4 things, the world would be a much brighter place. Get rid of the Department of Education and those other 3 things that I mentioned. So if the old Trumpinator does that, I am all with him, dude, for real. Okay, so let's get into these videos, man. The first one we're going to react to. Okay, so we'll do the David Weiss one last. We're going to go into the math that proves the Earth isn't flat video. So, little backstory, I mentioned at the top. So this video this morning, I just did a YouTube search for flat Earth proof. Okay. And this video was in the top 10 search results. So it meets my criteria to respond to it. Righto. There we go.
About 2,000 years ago, Eratosthenes made a very accurate calculation for the circumference of the Earth. He had read that in Syene, Egypt, during the summer solstice at noon, vertical objects did not cast shadows, as in the sun was directly overhead, which is because that city is right by the Tropic of Cancer. But in Alexandria, he noticed on that day that vertical objects did cast shadows at roughly 7.2 degrees, which is this angle here. Now, he assumed the Earth was a sphere, and also the sun is very far away compared to the size of the Earth, and that...
Right. So far in agreement. That's right. He assumed the Earth was a sphere, and then went on with his brilliant application of the Pythagorean theorem in order to confirm his hypothetical, right? But the thing is yeah, sure, he assumed that the Earth was a sphere in order to perform the mathemagic that is known as the Eratosthenes experiment. But the thing is you have to go back and check that premise at some point, dude. And mind you, Eratosthenes had no clue whatsoever about what exactly was atmospheric refraction, okay? Which is hugely important to this, okay? And we'll get into that later, but let's just continue on. Let's let this guy get a few words in edgewise. I am sorry.
And that would mean that the sun rays are parallel. He was then able to calculate the circumference of the Earth with very simple math, because parallel lines with a line through them mean this angle and this angle are the same.
Okay, so let's just put a mental pin in that right there, okay? The parallel sun rays, okay? Because it is crucial and critical to the Eratosthenes method to reify the globe Earth mathematics. Okay, so just keep that in mind, because according to Eratosthenes' method, the rays from the sun is so distant that those rays must be parallel to one another regardless of where you're standing on the sphere, hypothetically.
So the angle separating the two cities is 7.2 degrees. He then had someone measure the distance between the two cities, which was about 800 kilometers. So because 7.2 degrees is 2% of 360 degrees, then the 800 kilometers would be 2% of the circumference of the Earth. Thus, the circumference is roughly 40,000 kilometers. And the actual circumference of the Earth is super close to that. His actual measurements gave something closer to 39,000 kilometers, but still, quite impressive. Now, two things to note. First, this only works if the cities are on the same longitude line. Or said another way, they're directly north and south of one another. These cities are not, but they're pretty close. So that's one reason for the error along with human measurement. But second, and more importantly, this does not prove the Earth is a sphere.
You know, that's true, and at least dude can admit it. But what I will bring up here, just because I got to, because I don't want to forget to bring it up, and it is so important, but what about the umbra penumbra, right? Because when it comes to eclipses, right, as we'll say solar eclipses specifically, there's this sort of apologetic narrative involving the umbra penumbra effect, which is here. Let me just read to you a web definition. Define umbra penumbra in eclipse. Okay, so let's read the AI overview. Maybe there's a hallucination. I love those. Okay, so the AI overview says, in an eclipse, the umbra is the darkest central part of a shadow where the light source is completely blocked, while the penumbra is the lighter outer part of the shadow where only a portion of the light source is blocked. So this umbra, end quote. Okay, so this umbra penumbra thing here, I'll pull up let me just pull up this diagram here. Here, I'm gonna pause this at 158, and let me just pull up this diagram real fast. Here we go. Okay, so this is a diagram from Google, and you can see the umbra penumbra effect, right? And basically, this hinges on the light from the sun being anything but parallel. Okay, so they say that the solar light converges on itself here at this point, you know, somewhere in space between the sun and the earth, and then diverges from that point in order to produce this sort of stylus-like conical shadow of the earth, right? Or the moon or whatever's casting the shadow. Okay. Now, I will mention real fast that anyone that's ever played with a flashlight and like hand puppets knows that's not how light and shadows work. Okay, you're never going to cast a single light source on like a basketball where the shadow of that basketball is going to be like the size of a penny or something, right? But you know, that's exactly what's allegedly happening when we're dealing with solar eclipses. So, you know, according to the heliocentric model, the moon is about 2,000 miles in diameter. But usually the shadow of the moon, the umbra of the moon on the Earth, is about 50 to 100 miles in diameter. Very small indeed in comparison to the alleged 2,000 miles in diameter. But there are certain occasions, there's been a few in the last 100 years, where the shadow of the moon was as little as 2 or 3 miles in diameter. Okay. So, you know, they have to apologize for that. Okay. The fact that you've got a 2,000 mile diameter object allegedly casting shadows that's 50 miles in diameter or 2 or 3 miles in diameter is very hard to swallow, especially without some sort of explanation. So they had to come up with some sort of apologetics for this, and that is that sort of converging angles of the sun rays to cause that conical stylus pointer of a shadow. And now, again, this is in direct contradiction to one of the axioms of Eratosthenes' method to measure the Earth. So with that being said, which one is null and void? Is Eratosthenes null and void, or is the umbra penumbra thing null and void? You can't have both. You can't have your cake and eat it too, okay? So that's just yet another huge problem with, you know, with the heliocentric model. Back to the video.
At least on its own, it does not prove the Earth's shape, not even slightly. If the Earth were a donut, we'd still find a difference in shadow angles between two different locations at the same time. That's just gonna happen if the surface is curved. But let's say the Earth were flat. Well, if the sun is directly over one place at a certain time, where no shadows are cast, and the sun is not super far away, then also, obviously, it's gonna cast a shadow on a vertical object at a different location at that same time. So Eratosthenes' observation could also tell us the Earth is flat and the sun is much closer than we think.
And it only took the Globe Earth trolls, and I'm not saying this dude here is a Globe Earth troll. What I'm saying is they never even acknowledged what he just said for years. It was Eratosthenes was proof of the globe, right? It was proof of the globe according to the globetards for years. Okay, and when you tried to explain to them that, well, that he assumed that it was a ball, and he assumed that the sun was infinitely distant, practically. But you can also assume that the Earth is flat with a local sun and take the same numbers to glean an entirely different conclusion. Now, both of these conclusions are going to be mathematically correct, okay? But unfortunately, only one of them can potentially be true. Or in other words, both of them cannot simultaneously be true, right? Same thing, just exactly like with the sun rays. It cannot be parallel everywhere on the Earth, while it is also convergent, divergent. Okay? The two things are mutually exclusive, okay? So again, which one is it, globetards? Are y'all going to junk Eratosthenes, or are you going to junk the Umbra Penumbra? Because either way, you got some splaining to do, okay?
We think. And that's what flat earthers believe. And now we're gonna see why it's wrong.
Okay, now first of all, what flat earthers believe is of no consequence. So just saying, okay, means nothing.
It's wrong. We're gonna use the same numbers Eratosthenes found, which anyone can find themselves, at least during the next summer solstice. But we'll assume for now the Earth is flat and the sun is close-ish. So here's Syene, which the sun is directly overhead, casting no shadows. And here's Alexandria, 800 kilometers away, where shadows cast at an angle of 7.2 degrees from the vertical. And we can use this information to find how far the sun is in this model. If we add some lines, we see two similar triangles. So we could do a ratio, but I'm just going to use the fact that this angle is 82.8 degrees. So tangent of that equals the height of the sun over 800 kilometers plus d. But d is just the length of the shadow. This is very not to scale, but that distance might be a few feet or meters depending on the height of the building, but still nothing compared to 800 kilometers, so we can just ignore it. Then we solve this and we get the height of the...
And for the record, I don't believe Eratosthenes was dealing with a building. He had way higher technology equipment than that. I mean, we're talking ancient Greece here. So his high technology was literally a hole in the ground and then a stick in the ground. Two separate setups. Okay, so way more, experimentally valid. Okay. But I mean, it is sort of irrelevant. Yes, the shadow, the length of that shadow would be negligible, so you can ignore it. But I don't know. I just love dunking on globetards.
The height of the sun is about 6,332 kilometers. For reference, the International Space Station is just over 400 kilometers away.
Yeah, if you believe the lying Freemasons and occult Nazis of NASA. If you believe them, then sure, granted, it's, 250, 300 miles up. Sure.
Away. So the sun would be about 15 times further than that in the flat Earth model. And that is a problem. Let's see why. First of all, at noon, if you're in a place where the sun is right above you, then as we found, the sun is 6,332 kilometers away from you. But how far away would it be at sunset or sunrise? Well, according to this, the sun and moon never change height, they just move in a circle. And if we stop it here, this would be sunset in Egypt.
Okay, so now he is picking apart a model as if it is reality. Okay, so this is another sort of like a no-no. Like you can't, like, okay, you can't pick apart a model as if it's reality. Now, in the case of the globe, I think it's a little different, right? Because see, these sort of models of flat Earth are not taught to all generations of toddler as absolute unquestionable fact. Okay, whereas the globe and everything surrounding it is. Okay, so there's a little bit of a difference there. Okay, there is a double standard and there's a reason for that. Okay, so if you, in case you're one of the ones calling me out on that double standard, I hear you, but just shut the hell up because it's different. Okay, it's a totally different thing. Okay. Now, the thing is, though, first of all, I've postulated that perhaps the cause, assuming hypothetically that the cause of the moon phases is reflected sunlight, perhaps the cause of that is the varying altitude, hypothetically, of the sun and the moon. I mean, it's possible. I have postulated that potentially that's where we get the phases of the moon. So, like when it's a no moon, the sun would be a higher up, and when it's a full moon, the sun would be at its lowest. I mean, I see that as a potentiality. Now, if that's not depicted in some model or another, what are you trying to prove exactly? Like, I don't adhere to this model. And I would also say that I'm very much convinced that the sun and the moon are not physical objects. And so you can't ascribe physical properties to them. And I know that sounds like a cop out, but just to use an analogy, and it's not a perfect analogy, so the analog does break down a bit, but just follow me for a minute. Okay, so if you're in a room with a disco ball on the ceiling, and the light beads are reflecting all over the place, going around in circles, you couldn't measure the behavior of one of those light balls, reflections, and start ascribing physical properties to it and debunking that thing even exists, right? Because it's just objective, it's just subjective instances of light. There are too many perturbances between your eye and the heavens, too many unknown variables for us to do anything scientific in the heavens. Okay, we can't go there to tangibly measure or observe or verify things, and all we have to go by is NASA, a proven liar, a cult organization filled with Freemasons and founded by literal Nazis. Okay.
In Egypt, where the sunlight is about to go away, which happens when the sun is actually over South America. Okay, so if you're in Egypt on the summer solstice at noon, then the sun is this far above your head. On that same day, at sunset, the sun is above maybe Brazil, which is, let's say, 10,000 kilometers away. Using the Pythagorean theorem, that means the sun is now 11,836 kilometers away from you. It got almost twice as far compared to noon.
Okay. So, and this is something that I have been talking about for years. This is something that I have discussed at length with Jeranism as well for years. Okay, so this is no sort of surprise, and this is one of the biggest issues that I personally have with the sun and the moon being physical objects. Okay, now maybe they are physical objects, and still we have this other issue of atmosplanic refraction, and also unknown variables between our eye and these celestial objects, for lack of a better word. The subjective nature of how we observe the heavens is very much a personal thing, depending on your location, depending on the conditions therein, right? So, like, if you're standing on a beach on a humid day, your observation of the sun is going to be a completely different beast than if you're standing on the top of a mountain on a cold day in a crisp air, right? So your observation of the sun is subjective and varies depending on local conditions. Okay. So even with that being said, now for Eratosthenes, this wasn't a problem, because while the ancient Greeks may have understood a bit about refraction through things like prisms, in terms of atmospheric refraction or atmosplanic refraction, that wasn't allegedly acknowledged by science until like the 1500s. Okay. So thousands of years after Eratosthenes. Eratosthenes was not only totally ignorant of things like atmospheric refraction, to all his credit, he also was completely ignorant to things like electromagnetic relationships, okay, and things even more diverse things like ionized plasma and stuff like that, which we definitely have up in the heavens. There is definitely electrically charged gases up there. There's a lot of stuff going on in the heavens that we really don't understand, right? Just cue up the old Skinner song, things going on that you don't know. And that is true when it comes to the heavens. And so I don't know, man. Like, again, I know it probably seems like a cop-out, but what's going on in the heavens is kind of irrelevant. There is enough debunking data found in heavenly observations against the globe that when you start trying to use these arguments against flat Earth, that they do fall flat because nobody's making any positive claims about the heavens. Nobody except Jaron and Whitsitt.
That means at noon, the sun should appear to be about twice as big compared to sunset or sunrise, because it's about half the distance away.
Okay, so what an ignorant statement. So this dude is assuming that he understands all the variables that can go into such observations. Now, this does harken back to that old Rob Skiba video I'm sure a lot of you guys out there saw, where he was just basically making a demonstration of how refraction works. And he had like a sheet, a magnifying sheet, right, sitting on a table. And then behind that sheet, he had like a stick-up sun, like a stick figure with a sun on it. And he just merely pulled the sun away from the magnet. I'm live streaming. You got to go.
Look up here. I'll be here in 10 minutes.
They're not coming today. They're coming tomorrow.
The driver just texted.
You need to call Sydney. Don't deal with me. I gotta go shut this door, y'all. Damn, I swear to God. Sorry, y'all. I know I'm kind of a dick to her sometimes, but I've asked her. Forgive me. I gotta apologize to her, but goddamn. Okay, sorry. Excuse me. So what the hell was I talking about? I don't even know. Fuck it. Let me just back this up a hair.
That means the sun is now 11,836 kilometers away from you. It got almost...
Okay, right. So he made the claim that it should have gotten bigger when it's closer to you, but so watching that Rob Skiba video, one thing that I thought was very interesting was that the further the sun gets, the further an object gets away from the magnifying area, the more the magnification takes effect. And that sort of is what we see. And so it actually does comport that while the sun is apparently going further away from you as it apparently descends, the level of magnification increases not only as it gets further away from you, but also the atmosphere gets thicker and thicker the lower it goes. So there's almost like a stacking exponential effect, right? Because as the sun appears to get lower due to perspective, that light is refracted more so heavily through that atmosphere at that level because it's thicker, and to the point to where it gets to the horizon, right? And so, but what my point is though, who is claiming that the sun is even a physical object at all? Like, and again, I think that this goes beyond measuring the earth for curvature, right? I think that y'all globetards need to differentiate between gleaning a model of the heavens and how the heavens operate and gleaning an understanding of what the hell is going on down here in reality, right? Just as an example, and I will get back into this video, but objectively, we can all agree that pool tables are spherical. Pool tables are planar surfaces, and pool balls are spherical, right? And if someone tried to make the case for you that pool tables are actually spherical because they've studied all these pool balls and they're all spheres, so of course pool tables are spherical. I mean, that is tantamount to, the sort of logic that we're dealing with when we're arguing against people who have it firmly in their head that the heavenly luminaries are physical spheres up there. Okay. Now, granting them that for argument's sake, assuming that the heavens are filled with physical spheres, granted, that doesn't necessarily transitively prove that the Earth is also a sphere, right? So just because you see spheres flying around in the night sky doesn't necessarily mean that the Earth that you're standing on is also a sphere flying around in the night sky, right? But taking it a step further and looping it back to this conversation that we're having, who's making this positive claim that the heavens are even filled with physical spheres? Okay. And furthermore, our observations of these physical spheres is hindered and distorted by things like refraction and refringence and probably a host of things that we really have no way of really truly understanding what's going on in the heavens, and our observations of them are thus biased.
Almost twice as far compared to noon. That means at noon, the sun should appear to be about twice as big compared to sunset or sunrise, because it's about half the distance away. But that's not what anyone observes. The sun does not change size at all throughout the day. Definitely not by that factor.
Well, and that just isn't true. Sometimes it actually does. You can watch, like, if you've ever watched a sunset or like a sunrise from the top of a mountain, you can see the sun getting bigger. Especially on like a real cool, clear day, the sun definitely does get bigger until it reaches like sort of a zenith point, and then it remains sort of equal size, right? But so, like, yeah, when you're standing at the beach, the sun appears to remain the same size the whole time. But what exactly does that prove? Like, honestly, it doesn't prove anything. I mean, sure, like if you make certain assumptions about what's going on in the heavens, you can deduce certain things. But what if your assumptions are wrong? And why do we need assumptions anyway? Just go measure the damn Earth for curvature. I'll say this again, for the amount of money that Will Duffy spent on the final experiment, maybe he should have done a real experiment. Go and build a 5-mile long ruler and butt that up against fucking Lake Pontchartrain or something, and let's just see what we're dealing with once and for all. No. We're going to go make celestial observations and rope prominent flat earthers into making public fools of themselves? How much did it cost? I mean, not the trip. I hate to think that. I hate to suggest certain things like that because, again, I have respected these people in the past, but in a lot of ways, I do kind of also feel slighted, undeservedly so. And, shout out to Karen B too. I hadn't thought about Karen B in a while, but I got to talking to Rocket the other day, and he said something to me that kind of made sense because, so just breaking away from this video for a minute, for those of you that don't know Karen B, she does the thing with Mark Sargent and the Coffee Talk thing on YouTube. Go ahead and give her a sub. But before she did any of that, she used to do hangouts on my channel with me and I Spy NASA Lies, Candy Franklin, and a bunch of other people. I've known Karen B for years. Karen B was actually the first flat earther I ever met in person. Candy Franklin, I Spy NASA Lies, had hosted a party at her house in North Carolina. And Karen B came and picked up me and my wife and took us to the party, and we all spent the night at Candy's house. We had a great time, hung out, and went home the next day. Everything was cool. As far as I knew, me and Karen B had been friends this whole time. When I saw her in Denver at the 2018 conference, when I approached her and said, hey, she kind of looked at me like my head was made of worms, and it was very standoffish. It was very kind of bizarre. But then, so now I'm hearing from people that like she's just talking all kinds of shit about me behind my back and saying I don't even know what. There's people that I don't know that I've never heard of saying things about me behind my back as if they're true. So I don't know what all that is, but Karen B, if I ever did anything to you, I am sorry. I didn't mean to do whatever that was, but would you mind telling me what exactly it is that happened between you and I that has led you to say some of the things that I've heard you saying and act the way like, and I saw her again at Bob's memorial service a couple of years ago. And it was kind of the same thing. Like I approached her and said hi, and she just kind of acted like I didn't exist. It was kind of weird. I don't know, man. Anyway, so anybody out there that knows Karen B, I mean, I've texted her a couple times, called, left a couple comments on her streams, never heard anything back. So I don't know what the deal is with that. But you know, it does seem to me at some point like I was subject of some sort of a character assassination. I don't know how much Bob had to do with that, and people like Karen B and others. I don't know how much Jaron had to do with that. I was told that Jaron has stood up for me, and that does kind of jive with my understanding of Jaron and mine's friendship. But friendship, right? I don't know, man. I'm ranting at this point, but let's get to it.
Everyone on Earth sees the sun as the same size, and that can only happen if it's very far away relative to the size of the Earth.
Okay, that can only happen if it's very far away, but again, you are making certain assumptions about the sun and the system that we live in. Again, you can make assumptions all you want, but until we actually measure the Earth for curvature, and I really do love the reflection of the sun on the water right there. You know, if you try to, you know, just hypothetically make that image right there that y'all are looking at right now work on a ball Earth with a sun that's 90 million miles away and an Earth that's a curved ball, that's a very interesting phenomenon that happens every single time the sun sets on the water, doesn't it? So very interesting that they would be just ignoring that evidence at this very point as well.
Of the Earth. So that alone contradicts a sun that's nearby, which contradicts the flat Earth model.
Well, okay, so maybe it contradicts a flat Earth model, but again, it was historically assumed, especially like for the likes of Eratosthenes, that light only ever travels in straight line paths, right? Rectilinear light, okay? But in reality, light does not travel in only straight lines. It will curve and vary depending on temperature variance and particulates and barometric pressure. Just all kinds of factors go into refraction. And so this concept that light only ever travels in straight lines is fallacious, okay? And a lot of what Eratosthenes does hinges on that. And a lot of these assumptions that this very narrator of the video that we're responding to assumes that as well. It seems like he's assuming that light does not refract as it hits these different atmosplanic layers. He's also assuming that the sun and the other heavenly luminaries are physical objects in space. And I just think that is, it's premature. Okay. Now, I know that probably sounds far-fetched, but it is no more far-fetched than things like black holes and infinite space. And there's just the sheer impossibility of the creation account of the cosmos, like the Big Bang, and then the creation account of stars, which, you know, they rely on these clouds in the vacuum, these nebula, which you can't have clouds of gas in a vacuum. I mean, it's just on and on and on how absurd and ridiculous the heliocentric model is. And so when we flat earthers start saying things like, well, maybe the sun and moon are not actually physical objects, I know that sounds crazy, especially from the position of someone that was raised on planet Earth. But, you know, it makes a lot more sense than you think when you realize our model doesn't rely on anything from the heavens. Debunking globe Earth, you know, sure, there's a lot of great debunks for globe Earth in the heavens. Okay, but it is the globe Earthers that are making all the positive claims about the heavens, isn't it? Well, all the globe Earthers and Jaron and Witz.
And if you're going to say, well, the sun is bright, so it's hard to see its true size, well, everything I just said applies to the moon as well. The fact that the moon does not change size by nearly a factor of 2 throughout a single day proves it cannot be as close as this model predicts.
You know, and I think what I will do, let me see if I can find that clip from Rob Skiba, just so I can show y'all what I was talking about a minute ago with the magnification increasing as distance is gained from the observer. So let's see here. Let's go to YouTube. Now let's see how hard it is to find this, like verbatim searching for it, right? Rob Skiba, refraction sun lens sheet. Yeah, I just absolutely can't find the one I'm looking for here. Oh well, it doesn't matter. I'll try to find it and link it up. I'm not going to sit here and dig for it forever. But isn't that a shame though? That like even though I'm verbatim searching for a video that I know historically would have turned that into the top search result, it just doesn't work anymore because yeah, flat earth is a topic that is suppressed by these social media giants, right? And why? Like why, dude? So stupid. Anyways, sorry, I was gonna try to play that Rob Skiba clip, y'all, but yeah, I can't find it.
And since I'm showing math here, the angular size of objects actually does not change in direct proportion to how close they are. It's easy to see in the 2D case, like here the angular size of the object is 90 degrees. That's how much of the field of view is taken up. If the distance to the object is halved, well, the angular size is obviously less than 180 degrees, so it did not double in size. However, this approximation is very accurate when the object is very far away relative to its size, which is the case for the sun and moon. They only take up about half a degree in our field of view. The way I like to think about it,
I mean, again, so like, okay, so the atmos plane is a gradient. It's thicker at lower altitudes and increasingly gets less and less dense with altitude, okay? And so you have an increasing lensing effect the lower down something appears. I mean, it makes perfect sense to me. Like, it really does. I don't have any sort of problem with the sun remaining the same size, you know, throughout the day, even if we assume that it's a physical object because of how refraction works. And also because I've seen sunsets with my own eyes from mountaintops where the sun clearly gets smaller as it goes away. Okay. So, but you know, again, it's sort of a non-point because my estimation of flat Earth relies on a lot of things other than observations of the sun. For starters, the curvature doesn't exist that you would need to have a sphere, and it's at rest. Okay. So even if we had curvature and the Earth is at rest, okay, it proves that the heliocentric model is wrong 100%. Okay, but if it's, you know, and then on the other hand, if you had no curvature but you could prove that it's spinning, it's dead either way. No, we have neither. Like, any sort of physical argument that one could possibly make for spinning ball Earth does not exist. Okay, that's why they're having to go to trickery in the heavens. That's where the Most High shows his handiwork. The one place that we cannot verify, that's what they're going to use as their final experiment. That isn't even an experiment because you're debunking some shit that David Weiss said. Makes me sick, dude.
like to think about it is with arc length. A piece of the circumference of a circle is calculated simply as S equals R theta. So if we imagine the sun there, then roughly its diameter is R times that angle. If
Again, I don't want to sound like a cop-out, but I have already demolished this entire video's main premise. Like, I can really actually stop this one here. I know that I'll probably get told off for it, so let me let it run another minute, but honestly, there's no reason to continue going on with this video. The main premises that dude is using have been dismantled, okay? Well, let's see what happens with it.
If the sun gets twice as close, the size remains the same, of course. The distance is halved, so the angle has to be doubled. So, there you go. It works when objects are far away. Another thing to note is that sunsets and sunrises...
Right, also, but again, there are variables that he's not accounting for. He's making a lot of assumptions and also ignoring things like refraction, okay? It's just pseudoscience. What these people are doing, what these globetards do, is pseudoscience, whether they know it or not. Okay. Let's do some simple measurements of the surface of the water, folks. Let's take a fraction of the millions of dollars that they spent on the final experiment, and let's just build a 5-mile long ruler and hang that bad boy a few feet over Lake Pontchartrain and see what happens. That would be the end of it. Honestly, that would be the end of it.
Does make no sense if the sun is doing this. Again, if you're in Egypt and it's sunset, that means the sun is about 10,000 kilometers away at its same height. So the angle you should be looking at the sun is 32.3 degrees. Should be looking up.
Yeah, I mean, like if we lived in a vacuum and there was no such thing as atmosphere, and you know, if the sun is a physical object, yeah, sure, you could make all of these claims. But again, when did you go to the sun to verify its size and shape? Nobody's done that. We can't trust NASA. They've been caught lying about everything. Spinning ball Earth is dead, I can assure you.
Up at that angle. But at sunset, the angle is 0. Why the discrepancy? There's literally no explanation I can think of. The only thing you could argue is refraction, but our atmosphere refracts objects by like half a degree. It's really not much. Definitely couldn't pull.
That's not true at all. That's so, like, you know, that's convenient, right? Because what about Mick West's standard refraction? What about that? Because I'm pretty sure that was a little bit more than half a degree. Which is cherry picking nonsense, dude. Let's see, what is Mick West's standard refraction? Let's just see. Mick West standard refraction. I think it's like 15 degrees or something. I can't remember. Does anybody know in the chat what's Mick West's standard refraction number? I think it was 15 degrees. I don't know. I'm probably wrong. It don't matter. But, you know, the point is certainly not. So, like, refraction is half a degree. What a boneheaded thing to say. It is a variable, and it's also sort of a sliding scale variable depending on what portion of the atmosphere plane you're looking through, right? So, like, the refraction index is basically 0 if something's overhead, but when you're looking parallel to the horizon, like, the refraction index is at its maximum up at that point. So it's a sliding scale. Right? And then you have variable conditions as well. And you have other things like the magnetic field, the rotational vortex magnetic field of the Earth. You have all kinds of perturbances of light. And, you know, furthermore, what exactly is light anyway? Like, I know that we have the scientific definitions and the exact speed and, you know, the distance of what is a meter is dependent on that hypothetical speed. But I would argue that even mainstream science admits that they don't know what the hell light even is. It's a particle and a wave. Give me a fucking break.
Couldn't pull an object down 32 degrees. But the explanation for sunsets that you will see from these people is perspective. This also doesn't really make sense because perspective is like when train tracks appear to converge in the distance. That's because the viewing angle, when
perspective is part of it. I've already pretty much said everything I was going to say. So he's trying to box me into, I don't know, some straw man that he's making a case for. But yeah, perspective is a part of it. Refraction is a part of it. Unknown variables between our eye and the sun is a part of it. And the fact that we really don't know exactly what the sun is. I'm not going to be making any positive claims about what the sun should be doing. Okay. What I can tell you, though, is that the positive claims made by the globe Earth proponents that have been shoved down everyone's throat since we were little kids, all of that falls apart under logical scrutiny. So this guy here making this video needs to know that they don't have a working model and the globe is absurd, okay? Measure the damn Earth for curvature. Did you know that the etymological, literal meaning of the word geometry is like measure the Earth, right? Physics is, in a nutshell, the study of bodies in motion, right? So apply some physics, study some bodies in motion, apply some geometry, measure the damn Earth, and shut the hell up about the sun, honestly. And again, Jeranism knows better than this. We've talked about this shit at length years ago. And, you know, the fact that he has now been basically exposed as lying his ass off about the Antarctic midnight sun. I don't know, man. I just don't think I have the stomach to watch his whatever video he's going to come out about this. Y'all have to tell me about it, because I'll end up breaking my only computer screen, honestly.
Angle, when you're looking at the portion of train tracks close to you, is some theta. But as you look further away, that angle literally decreases. The gap takes up less of your vision, making it appear like they're converging. But when you're looking at the sun, or an object from far away, that's your angle. There's no perspective, there's no illusion here. The angle is just 32.3 degrees. I should have to tilt my head up by that amount to be looking directly at the sun.
Okay, wait a minute. So like, whoa. So yes, perspective. If you're like standing on a flat area and you see a row of telephone poles going off into the distance, the telephone poles, which are obviously way above your head, are going to apparently eventually converge with the horizon. It's the operation of perspective. It's how, you know, it's how reality works. It's how the human eye interprets reality, right? But to say that the sun wouldn't have perspective applied to it is, you know, assuming it's a physical object, is a bit premature. I mean, it makes perfect sense to me. Honestly, it really does. Like all of the things that he has problems with make perfect sense to me, or at least they comport with my understanding of flat Earth, because again, my understanding of flat Earth hinges upon measurements of the surface of water, which does not possess the curvature to result in a sphere, and also the fact that the Earth is a fixed frame of reference. Those are the two main things. Okay, then you have a bunch of problems with the globe and all of their positive claims. But, you know, really from our position, that's the lowest hanging fruits, is just debunking the crap out of the globe. We don't need to be making positive claims about what's happening in the Antarctic, especially in the damn heavens, right? This was all a very coldly calculated deception conducted by shills. And the fact that Jeranism is participating in this, you know, I just don't know what to make of it. I have my opinions, and it's not good. It's really not. But, you know, y'all draw your own opinions. I don't want to influence anyone
Sun
in that way
when it's that far away. But you know what's not perspective? Boats disappearing. If the Earth were flat, as boats swam away from the shore, well, you should always be able to see them because they're in your line of sight. The only perspective here is that the boats will get smaller, obviously, but it's not going to be obstructed by the water because there's literally no water on the line connecting your eyes to the boat.
Wow, like everything that guy just said is bullshit. Definitely read Zetetic Astronomy. If you don't like to read, I've got the audiobook playlist on my channel. It's a great book, but there's a section about perspective on the sea, and it sums this up perfectly. And I'm going to paraphrase, and if I don't do it justice, then just go watch the audiobook, and I'll try to put out a clip of what I'm talking about later on. But basically, yeah, that is perspective. When the ship goes over the curve, it is definitely perspective, perfectly in line with the operation of perspective. Okay, the water comprises a physical barrier to your line of sight. Okay? So at a certain range, the water is not see-throughable, right? It's not transparent, but the air, the sky, definitely is, right? And so as things move away from you, they converge into a point that's aligned with your eyes, right? So things that are, you know, askew from your line of sight, left and right, as they gain distance, will come towards the center, and objects that are way above your head will appear to drop towards the horizon as they gain distance from you. And the same thing can be said about objects on the ground. They go up towards your eyeball, right? But, you know, what's to your left and what's to your right and what's above you, all that's in the air. Okay. What's on the ground, eventually what's on the ground is going to obstruct your line of sight. So do an experiment or do an exercise in science, okay? Or do an exercise in observation. Go to a basketball court or someplace level and lay on your belly, Okay, and look and see where your horizon is then. Okay. Now, you're going to have a horizon right there on the basketball court for this same principle. And you could even have a little, I don't know, a remote control car go away from you. And you're going to see this exact same thing happen because of perspective and because the ground or the water is an obstruction to your line of sight. You also have things like false horizons caused by waves in the water. Undulation of the water is going to block your line of sight closer, right? So you may have a barge that's 10 stories tall, 5 miles away, and then way closer to you, like a half a mile away, you may have a swell that's 5 feet tall. And that swell is going to completely obstruct your line of sight towards that boat. So you do get false horizons as well. And you also have refraction too. But for him to say that the ships going over the horizon thing is proof of the ball and flurfers are stupid proves conclusively that he has not done his homework on this. Because I promise you, as sure as I'm sitting here, the ships going over the horizon thing is mutual. It works on flat Earth and is exactly what you would expect to see with the ship traveling away from you upon a plane. Okay. And this has been one of those sort of exclusive proofs of the ball that's been historically taught to us as little kids that everyone's familiar with, and is one of the first things that I remember being debunked, at least for me personally, very soundly debunked in Zetetic Astronomy, which was written in the 1800s. Okay, so this is not new information. Okay, and it really does lead me to question the integrity of someone. I mean, maybe he just thought he had something that destroys flat Earth, but we're all familiar with this, and it's a nothing burger. It really, all of this shit dude's saying is nothing.
Eyes to the boat. So the water should never obstruct the boat. The boat would just get too small to see. If the Earth were a sphere, the boat would eventually either...
Again, read Zetetic Astronomy. You know, I could probably do an excerpt from it, but this stream is already running kind of long enough, and I have another video that I need to get to with you guys. So let's just continue.
Be too small to see if the radius of the Earth were extremely large, way bigger than it actually is, or...
I would just quickly mention that perspective, like, you know, the idea of perspective and the horizon, that doesn't work on a ball, especially not at high elevations, right? So like maybe you would expect to have something like a horizon on a ball if you're like at sea level, and maybe even if you're like on the top of a building, a skyscraper. But when you're talking about the level of airplanes or high altitude weather balloons, no, that just doesn't work. We do not see the curvature that would be necessary on a ball. And so for this dude to say what you would see on a ball and what you wouldn't see on a flat Earth, I'm sorry to say, but this guy has lived on flat Earth his entire life and has never seen or been near a ball with a radius of 4,000 miles, only in his mind. And so what he's saying should happen and could only happen is so misguided, so elementary. And that's evidenced by the fact that he's using ships going over the horizon as one of his proofs. Absolute nonsense.
Or it will disappear over the curve, which is...
Oh, and I should add, but this is the garbage that YouTube shoves down our throats. Yeah, absolute garbage.
Curve, which is what we observe. How far until the boat would disappear? Let's find out. What I'm about to show will tell you how far you can actually see when you look out into the ocean. How far that last bit of water you can see is from you. If you don't know this distance, it's not as far as you'd think. So here's you on Earth looking out into the ocean, and you have some height h. The furthest thing you can see is where the tangent line starting at your eyes reaches the Earth. That's the last bit of Earth you can see, which is what we call the horizon. Now, we want to find this distance d from your eyes to the horizon. So we just make this triangle. This length is r, the radius of the Earth. This length is r plus your...
So they're assuming a value of r to prove that the radius exists. It is such circular logic, such just boneheaded nonsense. But you know, this is almost reminiscent of what Robotham was doing with the 8 inches per mile squared, you know, curvature calculation. And I wanted to mention this too. Like, isn't it interesting that it is flat Earth proponents that champion the curvature calculator? That is interesting because, see, I remember growing up when I was a kid, my dad, you know, told me the Earth was a ball, and he used to have like a story he would tell. Like, I would ask him, why can't we see the mountains? You know, we would take a trip to the mountains in Northern Virginia a couple times a year, and when you'd get close to the mountains, they like take up your whole, you know, everything you can see is just mountain, right? When you get up close to them. Okay, and I would ask him, why can't we see this big mountain from, you know, from our house? And he would tell me it's because of the curvature of the Earth. And I just believed it, right? I mean, why would you question that? Everybody knows the Earth is a ball, right? But in terms of actually calculating, okay, so, you know, assuming the Earth is this ball that they say, exactly how much curvature should we expect? Like, how much vertical descent should there be over 10 miles or over 20 or over 100? And, you know, it is fascinating and very telling that it was and still is flat earthers that are championing this curvature calculation. They don't teach it in schools. They teach you that the Earth is a ball in school, but they don't ever teach you, like, how could one go and independently verify that? And how could you go to measure for that? And what would you even be measuring for, right? You got to have some sort of an idea of what you're looking for. You don't want to be ambiguous about it. You want to be exact. And the methodology that Robotham used, he employed the help of a mathematician. It's very sound and very accurate, assuming that the Earth is a ball. But I do think it's interesting, isn't it, that it is flat earthers, not the educational system, not the globetards, that are really championing and shouting the exact curvature calculation from the rooftops. Let's see if dude gets into 8 inches per mile squared or not. He may not. He may dance all the way around it, because if you check for that 8 inches per mile squared of, you know, vertical descent due to curvature over distance, it doesn't exist, right? So, you know, if you're cheerleading for the globe, the last thing you want is an informed public that knows how to measure for curvature and what the fuck they're measuring for, right? So we can thank Robotham and the flat earthers for at least that, even if you are still a globetard.
Your height h, thus we get r squared plus d squared equals r plus h squared. I'll FOIL the right side to give us this, the r squareds cancel, and the h squared is negligible since your height is so much smaller than the radius of the Earth, so we can just ignore that. So we get the distance d equals the square root of 2rh. If someone is 6 feet tall, or 183 centimeters, then by plugging in the radius of the Earth, we get a distance of 3 miles, or 4.82 kilometers.
Oh, okay, so he's doing distance to the horizon calculation. I'm sorry. Yeah, so what exactly does this prove?
That is how far you can see when looking out into the ocean. And that's exactly what we observe with boats.
Black Swan, though. But Black Swan, though, right? I mean, shit. Bear with me, y'all. So basically what he's saying is that there is a geometric horizon based on the geometry of the ball, right? So you have a hard and fast cutoff as to where that horizon is based on the, you know, vertical descent of the ground. But, you know, this image here, the so-called Black Swan image, flies in the face of that. Both of these deep oil wells are beyond the geometric horizon, and both of them are entirely visible beyond that geometric horizon. And there is even visible horizon beyond way beyond the furthest one. Okay, so whether you realize it or know it or not, this image right here totally debunks it. Oh shit. Was I totally not sharing the video before? Or no, I totally was, wasn't I? Okay, never mind. So there you go, Black Swan. For those of you who don't know, definitely go check out Nathan Oakley, 1980. He does a lot on Discord, YouTube, all that. So definitely a fun group of guys to hang out with. They can be a little brutal sometimes, but you know, gotta love them. And I've been friends with Nathan for a long time, since day one of Flat Earth, as far as I can remember. So, you know, same thing with Jeranism. I hate to see this sort of division and suspected shillery, like it really does rub me the wrong way. But maybe, you know, I don't know, man. It's hard to come to any other conclusion. I don't know. Let's go back to the video.
This video is sponsored by Brilliant. Why the discrepancy? There's literally no explanation I can think of. The only thing you could argue is refraction, but our atmosphere refracts objects by like half a degree. It's really not much. Definitely couldn't pull an object down 32 degrees. But the explanation for sunsets that you will see from these people is
sorry about that. Like I had accidentally pulled that video offline and then it wanted to start back over. So I am trying to...
This video is sponsored by starting from the bottom. But this brings me to my last talking point. A very common response you'll hear from flat earthers is, hey, I can see these things that I shouldn't be able to see because they're so far away. And first of all, sure, but not the bottom. That is key. But sometimes it seems like we shouldn't be able to see the object at all. Well, check this out. Let's say an object is a distance L away. The question we want to answer is, what is this drop I'll call Y? Again, super simple. First, that straight line distance through the Earth technically is roughly L when we're talking about a few miles or kilometers because the Earth is so big. Again, I am not drawing this to scale, but we will use this approximation. So now we have a triangle. This length is the radius of the Earth minus Y, and this length is just R. We do the Pythagorean theorem, factor some terms, cancel out the R squareds again. For short distances, Y squared is negligible, makes very little difference, so we ignore that. Then we solve for Y, and we get Y equals L squared over 2R. Using American units real quick, we'll assume L and R are in miles, which is going to give you very small values for Y, which would also be in miles. To fix this, I'll convert Y to inches by multiplying everything by 5,280 feet per mile, and then 12 inches per foot. This gives us almost exact...
Okay, so 13 minutes. I'm going to have to put it back at 13 minutes. So it won't let me pause it now for some reason, but... and now I done forgot what the fuck I was going to say, man. I'm going to have to cut this damn thing back. Where was I at? 13 minutes? Oh, fuck. I had a point I was going to make, and then I'm like sitting here having technical difficulties, and I just lose it, man. I'm like, it's really bad. Let me refresh this and see if I can get that played again. Fuck. And I need to be able to pause at Riverside. Like, what the fuck?
This video is sponsored by Brilliant. This video is sponsored by Brilliant. About 2,000 years ago...
Okay, at least I can pause it now, too. All right, that's good. Okay, here we go. Right back to it. Sorry, y'all.
Is R the radius of the Earth. This length is R plus your height h. Thus, we get R squared plus D squared equals R plus H squared. I'll FOIL the right side to give us this. The R squareds cancel. And the H squared is negligible since your height is so much smaller than the radius of the Earth. So we can just ignore that. So we get the distance D equals the square root of 2RH. If someone is 6 feet tall or 183 centimeters, then by plugging in the radius of the Earth, we get a distance of 3 miles or 4.82 kilometers. That is how far you can see when looking out into the ocean. And that's exactly what we observe with boats. They start to disappear from the bottom at roughly that distance, also in line with a curved Earth.
Okay, so hypothetically, while that may be in line with the curved Earth, and I'll just grant that for argument's sake, I'm not saying that's true, but okay, granted, it is also perfectly aligned with what you would expect on a flat Earth. I mean, in one regard, it is sort of a non-issue. Like the ships over the horizon, it really doesn't go either way. But the globe Earth side of this thing is definitely the one who has projected it into the cultural milieu as an exclusive proof of the sphere. And anyone who says otherwise must be some kind of an idiot, right? But again, this sort of ships over the horizon thing was debunked in Zetetic astronomy very nicely, very neatly. And I will say that the next mass that we're about to get to, he's literally stole directly from Robotham, but he's pretending like he came up with it on his own. So I don't know what that is, but why didn't you come up with that before you started trying to debunk flat Earth? Why weren't you out there measuring the Earth for curvature? Why don't you still do that? You know?
And this becomes more pronounced with taller objects. You can still see objects past the horizon because they have height, but they become obstructed more and more with distance starting from the bottom. But this brings me to my last talking point. A very common...
Totally irrelevant, again, because as objects gain distance from the observer, they basically squish in equidistantly from all directions. And there's only one direction that is unique, which is the direction of down, because you're standing on the ground and the ground is an obstruction to your line of sight. So objects that get beyond the apparent horizon, the horizon is merely an apparent area. It is not an actual physical geometric location. It is an optical illusion is all that it is. But when objects like boats get beyond the horizon, they are definitely obscured from the bottom first. The fact that globetards can't fathom this is really quite concerning to me. I mean, it is another example where the cognitive dissonance rules every aspect of what they deem to be possible. Therefore, it rules every aspect of what they literally see with their eyes or see with the eyes of the mind, right? It's really quite fascinating, but sad.
A very common response you'll hear from flat earthers is, hey, I can see these things that I shouldn't be able to see because they're so far away. And first of all, sure, but...
No, it's not that we can see these things that we shouldn't be able to see. It is that if the Earth was a sphere, these objects would be totally obscured by the horizon, right? Y'all are claiming that the Earth vertically descends along a curve as distance is gained. And so, you know, when you've got a lighthouse or something that's 50 miles away, according to the very geometry that he described, that lighthouse should be like hundreds of feet below the horizon line. You should never be able to see even the tippy top of it. And yet there are examples all over the damn world where lighthouses can be seen for miles further than technically should be allowed on the globe. So it's not that we're seeing things that we shouldn't be able to see. It's that the globe Earth does not comport to reality. That is the problem. But don't you just love how globe earthers couch shit?
But not the bottom. That is key. But sometimes it seems like...
That is absolutely irrelevant, and dude doesn't know what he's talking about.
Seems like we shouldn't be able to see the object at all. Well, check this out. Let's say an object is a distance L away. The question we want to answer is, what is this drop I'll call Y? Again,
it is Robotham's 8 inches per mile squared estimation. And so the fact that this dude is acting like he's coming up with this on his own is pretty, it is pretty demonstrative of what's going on with him. Pseudo-intellectual much.
Again, super simple. First, that straight line distance through the Earth technically is roughly L when we're talking about a few miles or kilometers because the Earth is so big. Again, I am not drawing this to scale, but we will use this approximation. So now we have a triangle. This length is the radius of the Earth minus y, and this length is just r. We do the Pythagorean theorem, factor some terms, cancel out the r squareds again. For short distances, y squared is negligible, makes very little difference, so we ignore that. Then
And again, this is exactly, he's running through exactly how Rowbotham arrived at the 8 inches per mile squared as hip pocket estimation of the expected curvature, or expected vertical descent due to geological curvature, which does not exist.
Then we solve for y, and we get y equals L squared over 2r. Using American units real quick, we'll assume L and R are in miles, which is going to give you very small values for y, which would also be in miles. To fix this, I'll convert y to inches by multiplying everything by 5,280 feet per mile, and then 12 inches per foot. This gives us almost exactly 8L squared, where L is still in miles. This is the 8 inches per mile squared they always mention. It's accurate at short distances. So if some
It's accurate at distances up to anything that is remotely observable, right? So if you pull the 8 inches per mile squared thing into like AutoCAD and look at that tangent line from certain altitudes, like yes, the algebra sort of breaks down once you get above 1,000 miles, or like once you're into 2,000 miles, it's really far off. Like there is a slight. So it's like 7.998 inches per mile squared, right? So that 0.002 fucking percent or whatever does throw this calculation off over many, many miles. And then also, you do have the fact that you're dealing with a parabolic curve. And so when you're squaring things, that is a bit counterintuitive, isn't it? So yes, the 8 inches per mile squared thing only works up to several hundred miles. Like even up to like 1,000 miles, it's still pretty damn close, right? So for him to say that it works at close range, but well, I mean, how much further than 500 miles are you going to see, right? And by the way, that does remind me of a video that I put out pretty recently. My buddy took video of Pikes Peak when he was taken off in a plane in Phoenix, Arizona, which is over 500 miles away. Now, the curvature of the Earth at 500 miles away should be miles of vertical descent, right? And yet we can see Pikes Peak clear as a fucking bell, okay? So, and I just love how this dude is totally plagiarizing Robot. He's perjuring too, plagiarizing Robotham and trying to pretend like he came up with this shit on his own. And then making fun of Flurfers for actually doing the one thing that no globetard seems to have the gumption to do, which is apply it to reality. Let's see how he botches this one.
So if something is 3 miles away, like the horizon, the drop is 72 inches, or 6 feet. Just like we saw earlier, a 6-foot observer can see 3 miles out. If the distance is 10 miles away, the drop should be about 800 inches, or 66.7 feet. And people will say, hey, if the drop is 66.7 feet, and let's say the object is 50 feet tall, I shouldn't be able to see it. And it's not that simple. Just look at this. Here's the Earth, you're standing on the shoreline, looking out, this is your line of sight. Now, imagine if an object is way...
Shit, I can't believe I just took this offline. I'm at 14 minutes. I did not mean to do that. So what, is he now gonna say that you have to subtract the observer's height from the total? Is that, so he's basically, I see what he's gonna say. He's trying to say that flat earthers are forgetting to subtract the distance to the horizon, right? Is that what he's fixing to do, really? Let's see.
Way over here, way past the horizon. Well, in order to see it, it only has to be this tall to be in your line of sight. And that height is much shorter than the, quote, drop in height that occurs due to the curvature of the Earth. So even though the drop we expect might be a lot, we can still see objects much shorter than that because math. And if you'd like to learn more math...
Because math? What? Okay, so now I know. Dude is shilling, right? That dude, that's dude is just shilling then, right? Am I wrong? Did I miss something there? But did he just not say because math? Fuck a doodle do.
Learn more math, I highly recommend checking out Brilliant.
Oh, no, I'm not going to let you plug that shit, dude. I'm not. Okay, so enough of that. Let's get right into the next video. The link for both of these is in the description box below. Before we start on this, let me just check in on you guys in the chat real quick, make sure that I don't have my head on backwards or something, and then we'll get right back into it. Charles Harrington, yes, sir. Staying legit, man, always. Too legit to quit, right? MC Hammer style. No, taking it way too far. That's a little too far back. Okay. Hey, you know what, though, man? MC Hammer's got some respect, though. I didn't know that. Like, did y'all know how fucking gangster MC Hammer really, truly is, though? For real, dude? Like, that Boulay don't really fuck with him, from what I gathered. Like, MC Hammer's, like, legit the man, dude, for real. Like, even still to this day, bro. Anyway, how did I get, oh yeah, that's right. E equals MC Hammer is like, I swear to God, fucking Einstein should have done that one. All right, here we go. Y'all doing okay, though? That's what I wanted to make sure. Can I get you guys anything? Was your appetizers okay? Would you like any fries or cold beers? Actually, you know what, man? I had my coffee. I got one Coors Banquet Gold in the fridge. I'm going to get that one for this next video, you guys, because this one is going to be hard for me. Y'all might have to just change the fucking channel because I don't know, man. We'll see how it goes. I'll be right back. Y'all get you a cold one, too. Smoke if you got them. Okay. And yes, even though I am day drinking here, no, it's not a cry for help. I'm fine. And I did have my coffee. I don't have shit else to do today. So I got one. I'm gonna have one with this. I hope y'all will join me. Coffee's fine. Okay, this was put up on David Weiss's channel the other day, DITRH. And we'll just play it, and I will respond as we go.
I would put it to you like this.
Don't you just love how he starts with the sad music already? It is a sad day for some flat earthers, I guess. Not for this one. I'm same as I was yesterday. I just have a little bit lesser regard for certain people that I did have some respect for. That's pretty much the only thing that's changed for me. I don't know about y'all.
If there's a dome, if we're in an enclosed system, does that not mean that there are a whole lot of variables that we don't know about that could?
I would say, yeah, I would say you don't even need that qualifying positive claim at the beginning. I would say, regardless of what's going on up there, there are a lot of variables that we don't know about. Why do we have to put the positive claim about a dome in there? I mean, I'm not saying there isn't a dome, but what I'm saying is that's sort of irrelevant. I haven't seen any evidence for a dome. Maybe there's a dome, but it is irrelevant, and it's something that we can't prove. And so to go off onto tangents of hyperbole based on something that hypothetically might be is exactly the kind of shit that got us into the position we're in with the globe in the first place. So we need to be very careful with this. I'm not dogging this dude here that is talking to Shill Duffy, but whatever.
About that could affect the lights in the ceiling.
Yeah, I can grant that. Yeah, I can grant that.
So I'm here with my version of our flat earth, my model of it. And I'm excited. Like, I really am.
And you know, you got to share dude's joy. You can tell this dude here's been hit with the flat earth bug, and you know, God love him, right? More power to him. But I don't understand why people feel like they have to have, you know, a coffee table model of something that explains all things, especially in the heavens. You know, let me preface this by saying that the azimuthal equidistant projection, the AE map, is not a model, okay? It is a projection that you can make any place, any point on that map can turn into the periphery, okay? So like you stretch a point to infinity around the outside edge, and that's where you get the circular shape of the damn thing. It's whatever's antipodal on the hypothetical sphere to the point that's in the middle of the map, okay? So it's an azimuthal equidistant projection, but it is not a model. It's literally skews the information to the point of infinity at the periphery. So like to call that a model, I mean, it is tantamount to calling the Mercator projection a model, right? So like you could tell globetards, well, you believe in the Mercator projection, but I thought you thought the Earth was a sphere. The Mercator projection's flat on the table. How can that be a sphere, right? And it's tantamount to that. So like, and I'll give you an example. So like, okay, so on the Mercator projection, you've got the equator, and distances on the equator, at the, you know, the line across the very center, are most accurately represented on that map at the equator. Now, on the other hand, at the top and the bottom of the Mercator projection, so the North Pole and the South Pole, those two areas are supposedly a single point. So the single point of the North Pole at the top and the single point of the South Pole at the bottom, stretched to infinity, represented as a line equally as long as the equator. Okay, and again, the equator represents a line that is about 25,000 miles long on the Mercator projection. Okay, the lines across the top represents a single point that is skewed to literally infinity to stretch across the entirety of the top. Okay, so to call the Mercator projection a model of the globe is the exact same thing as calling the AE projection a model of the flat Earth. Furthermore, when you try to cram the heavens into that AE projection that is a globe, put onto a Mercator projection, and then put onto an AE projection, so it's got the globe hard-boiled into it. But when you start trying to ascribe the mechanisms of the heavens to such a misconception that the AE is, I mean, sure, the AE projection has its uses, it has its limitations, and it has its totally ass backwards things about it too. And you have to understand what the AE projection is before you go, you know, making millions of dollars and buying boats with a stupid fucking app. Which, you know, by the way, why were you guys so harsh to Nathan Oakley when he was trying to reach out to y'all and help y'all improve your flat Earth, you know, improve your fucking flurfer game? Did y'all have this shit planned even then? I mean, I don't know, man. I wonder.
I'm like a young kid the night before Christmas, and have been for the past several hours. All I can say is I'm extremely humbled, because I believe what they just witnessed is not only what I've been saying for months now and claiming that the biblical cosmological model predicts it, but I was able to model it as well. And 2 days before today, I got my best version of the modeling so far, and it's only going to get better and better. And from what I'm seeing from the footage of the confirmed 24-hour Antarctic sun, which I've been saying for a while now that I would bet everything that we do see it. What I'm seeing, I'm not there, but what I'm seeing, it fits exactly what I can demonstrate within this model.
Yeah, it definitely does. And I would say whether you have a physical glass dome or whether you have something a little bit more abstract, like a energetic dome, you know, we already know that there is ionized plasma tubes running meridionally in the lower magnetosphere. Okay, the stuff was imaged by Cleo Loy, an undergraduate student at the University of Sydney, using the Murchison radio telescope array years ago. It's been within the last 5-10 years, Cleo Loy, basically imaged these long suspected, now allegedly proven by science, plasma tubes in the lower magnetosphere, right? So I guess what my point is, and I'm not dogging what dude here is saying, what I'm saying is it doesn't really even necessitate a physical glass dome in the sky. And, you know, furthermore, if we are dealing with something that's physical and glass, in my opinion, it doesn't necessarily need to have some base on the ground either, right? We won't get too much into my speculations and my positive claims, because again, these sorts of positive claims are not necessary to prove our argument. I mean, it is a fun thing to think about, and it is nice to have answers as to what's occurring in the heavens. But, you know, without the capability to tangibly verify the things that we're talking about, like the sun and the moon, it really all is just conjecture, but we'll go with it, man.
Model. Now, is this model perfect and exactly like the system that our creator created? No, but it is following the principles and the descriptions that he gives us in his word. And by doing that, I'm able to account for these phenomena. So I can account for the 24-hour sun exactly like they're seeing it. And when they see the 24-hour moon at the specific times, I can even tell you what times that would be. It's going to be this time of year, 2 weeks out of the year. They're going to see it from the first waxing crescent until the first quarter. They'll see it for those days for 24 hours circling with the sun in the sky. After first quarter, it'll pass the equator headed towards Cancer. They won't see it until it gets back to third quarter, when it crosses back across the equator towards Capricorn. And they'll see the third quarter moon until no moon.
Okay, fine. You know, what kind of burns me up about this, though, is because David Weiss rode the coattails of a lot of prominent flat earthers that were very talented, very dedicated, but they just didn't have, for some reason, they didn't have the connections that David Weiss had. And, you know, it's funny because David Weiss has had those sorts of big connections since as long as I've known dude, right? So when I first met David Weiss, it was on the John LeBon channel, where John LeBon had a series of it was called Globe Earth Skeptic or Round Earth Skeptic or something like that. And he had interviews with several prominent flat earthers. I mean, he might have had Dubé on there, Jeranism, myself, and then as a sort of finale of the series, he had all of the, you know, the panel members that he had over the course of the entire show on one big sort of smorgasbord or whatever, right? You know, virtually on the podcast or whatever. We didn't actually go to a buffet, is what I'm saying. But that's how I met Jeranism, and that's how I met David Weiss, was through, you know, the John LeBon Round Earth Skeptic thing. But so anyway, it was because of that, David Weiss reached out to me and asked me, would I be interested in doing a debate with a Harvard astrophysicist on Midnight in the Desert, right? And this would have been just a month, weeks into me coming over as a flat earther doing my first video. So like I put out my first video May 1st of 2015, Nazis of NASA in the Infinite Plane. And I did the debate by August of that same year. So it was very quickly therein. But so the way that it was told to me, now I don't know how true this is, but I was told by David Weiss that Eric Dubé was supposed to be the one that did the debate with Josh Grinley. But I was told that Eric backed out at the last minute. Now, I don't know if that's true. I really don't. That's what I was told. So maybe that's wrong. Maybe Eric did back out. Now, it did seem to me like the thing was set up as a failure for me. Like I was definitely not supposed to win that debate, right? And when I made actually I got a lot of good points on there. I mean, there's a lot of things that I definitely would have done differently, but I was very fresh into flat earth at that point. And, you know, there just wasn't a lot of good information out at the time. Like I had my gut and I knew a lot of facts, and I had my facts. I knew the globe balls to bones was bullshit. And I was a, you know, through and through flirter at that point. And I knew that as long as I just stuck to the truth and tried to hold these people's feet to the fire, I could win such a debate. Now, I didn't expect Art Bell to be so biased and, you know, cut me off, and it was really unfair the way that I was treated. Frankly, I thought it was going to be George Norrie doing the hosting, but that was just me being a bonehead, I guess. For some reason, I thought George Norrie was exclusively Midnight in the Desert at that point. So anyways, David Weiss was the one that lined that up for me. Now, I don't know, like, how does David Weiss have those sorts of media connections? I don't know. I mean, it's probably public knowledge. Everybody probably knows. I just don't know that much about people. You know what I mean? Especially people that I don't know. I mean, I had considered David a friend, but what happened was with that debate, I posted the entire thing on my YouTube channel and it got copyright strike taken down. Okay. Not just like demonetized or whatever, but they had the copyright strike removed. They had it removed from YouTube for a copyright strike. And so that pissed me off, right? And I was very new to YouTube and I was very unfamiliar with the appeal process and things like that. I felt like they were singling me out. And obviously you can't copyright a radio, you know, a radio debate that I participated in. You don't have copyright over my voice. So it was really bullshit. And I made a big stink about it. And in fact, I DM'd every single one of my subscribers on YouTube at that point. It wasn't that many. It was like a few hundred, or maybe a couple thousand people or whatever. But I DM'd everybody and linked up the remix to the debate because I couldn't post the whole thing on my channel. Okay. And David Weiss contacted me, basically telling me, you got to take this down. You got to stop making us think about this. You got to stop. And I'm like, wait a minute, dude. Like, whose side are you on? And it, like, so, like, that really just kind of rubbed me the wrong way about David Weiss at that point. Now, also, I know that he's used a lot of my work on his platforms or whatever. And at the beginning, he actually did send me a few payments. I'm not going to lie. He sent me $50 several times in the beginning. And the way I understood it is because he was making money on ad revenue on his end. And so I don't know what kind of a share I got, but I thought that that was nice of him. And I will come out and say that. Now, that did obviously stop at some point, a long time ago. I'm not sure exactly what happened, but yeah, it was weird. The whole thing with Midnight in the Desert and the way that David was seeming really kind of bizarre even then it was just weird to me, right? But, you know, fast forward to now, and, you know, I hear things from like Nathan Oakley, who I have no reason to not believe, that basically David Weiss was like flaunting his new speedboat and shit and all this money he's making off of the, you know, off of the Android app. And he's sort of like the biggest flat earther that there is, like certainly the most popular. He's done all of those interviews with all those big names and stuff. And I can't really sit through them because, I mean, you would think at some point Flurfin would rub off on David Weiss because, I mean, he is the biggest flurfer that there is. But in terms of like succinctly making a case for flat earth or, you know, answering basic questions, or I don't know, I mean, I hate to pick apart what someone says on like an interview, but when it's interview after interview after interview of just, I don't know, like really poorly representing flat earth, it almost makes you wonder if it's not on purpose. And who made this motherfucker, you know, de facto king of flat earth? Like, I could almost get behind Eric Dubay, right? I mean, Eric Dubey's sexy enough, but Eric Dubay was just a fucking asshole. At least he was to me. I mean, no offense, but like, I was treated very badly by Eric Dubey's crew right out the gate. And so when I was sort of welcomed with open arms by David Weiss and Jeranism and you know, even Bob there for a time, you know, it felt really good. And I'm the type of person, I am a very loyal friend. And also this whole flat earth thing is very important to me. And so I'm willing to make sacrifices for like the greater good of this thing, right? But you know, when shit starts getting suspicious, I don't know, man. Sometimes we gotta verify.
For 7 days. So they're going to see for 14 days, the first week of, basically the first week of every month and the last week of every month, they'll see a 24-hour moon right now. In the winter time, the full moon, basically from first quarter moon.
But again, sorry, I got off on a tangent there. Not to interrupt, dude. Oh, again, why was David Weiss shoving Nathan Oakley and them away with both hands, and telling him off and laughing in his face that he was going out on his speedboat because he made all that money through that stupid app? Personally, I wasn't comfortable giving my location and shit to that app. I just don't trust people, especially not like rich people with connections in media, right? I don't know. I mean, it's just like, no offense. I have a lot of people that are well off, and I've historically had rich friends and things like that. So I'm not like opposed to rich people, right? But when someone is already wealthy and then comes into a movement that I am passionate about, doesn't really add much to that movement, but takes a lot away. I don't know. It just really rubs me the wrong way, man. I don't know. And you know, why wasn't David Weiss presenting this kind of shit for the last 2 years? Why is this reactive to Jaren's debacle?
Quarter moon until third quarter moon, those 14 days would be the days that they would see a 24-hour moon. And that's because the moon's moving between the tropics monthly, opposite to the sun. The sun moves between the tropics annually. So you only get the 24-hour sun at intervals annually, whereas the moon will swap back and forth 2 weeks at a time, depending on the time of year, whether it's winter or summer. So with this kaleidoscopic type system, what you get is an apparent view to the luminaries at all times. So
for anyone that's ever had kaleidoscopic doesn't sound that great. Just say it.
So what their sources are, we don't know for sure what the source is, but what we do know is the light we see is an apparent view to each viewer at all times. We're not seeing the physical object, the physical source itself. We see what appears to be a physical representation in an apparent position.
That's exactly right. Totally agreed. It is an apparent position. Yeah. And he even was correct by sort of carefully choosing his words about calling it an object. I'm with him. We just don't know enough. I mean, sure, you could use the word object, but, you know, with a loose definition of that.
To us at all times. I'm excited. I think it's awesome. I can't wait for them to get back with all this data and us to really pour through it. This is something that is beyond amazing. I mean, 200 years. This topic has been at least 200 years. This topic.
Yeah, and now it's sort of a straw man win for the Globe. I'm not so excited about it. I mean, I saw this coming, dude. The writing was on the damn wall. It was not some sort of secret. But yeah, this is the effigy of flat Earth being summarily executed in the public eye. Well, I mean, you know, at least because of this, I think that flat Earth is going to remain a bit more niche than it ever was, thanks to the efforts of the likes of Jarenism and David Weiss.
For years, this topic has been completely swept under the rug, not talked about, and hidden. And right now, it is one of the biggest conversations out there. And it's only opening the door to truth because we know we've been lied to on a massive scale. And we've got to relearn everything, and we're doing it. And the Creator's being faithful to give us revelation about His design and His realm and how it actually works. And that to me is just amazing. But in the system He created a cast metal mirror, a molting looking glass, or a bronze metal mirror that reflects heat in His description of His word. When you apply those principles and then you study superfluids and how those act and how it's very likely that the ceiling of our domed mirror is filled with a superfluid, that superfluid layer would create a two-way mirror at its level surface, which is what I have represented here. And when you
I'm fine with everything dude is on about right here. I personally try to kind of separate biblical stuff from flat Earth stuff. I mean, I know that there is definitely a sort of overlap between the two for sure, like unquestionably. But when it comes to winning souls over to flat Earth, if you marry it to a sort of Christian narrative, you're going to turn off way more people than you welcome in, because there is just so much stigma about Christianity in general. And I'm saying this as a devout follower of Yeshua, you know what I mean? A Christian. Okay. But I don't know, man. I just like to put that out there because, sure, for your Christian flat earthers, this is great right here. Great stuff. And I think there's something to be gained from all this type of thing. But in terms of like, what are we accomplishing with this? What are we proving? How is this damage control affecting, you know, the public perception of Jeranism? I mean, those were nice. That was a nice way to put it. I'm excited for all this data, but I mean, this is an assassination attempt on flat Earth. So, you know, I don't know, man. I'm not too excited about it.
And when you do that, you get that exact same thing where you have a source light coming in, and then from beneath, depending on your position on the realm, you see an apparent representation of that source light. And it's quite beautiful. It's actually spreads the light out so perfectly and evenly that it's an amazing creation. We know water's level. We know we need a container for gas pressure. We know we're not moving, that we're stationary. So all.
Well said. And I tend to agree with everything dude's saying, honestly. You know, let me leave it in. Let me say this. I would be very surprised if the heavens end up being some sort of a, you know, mechanical contraption, right? Very surprised. Like, I am way more leaning towards, you know, the analogy I mentioned with Flatland, something of a higher dimension, to where like the stuff of the heavens is literally beyond our capacity as human entities to fathom, right? To wrap our brains around. Maybe like when we're in dream state, or, you know, meditative state, or near-death experience, or even certain, you know, psychedelic experiences, you know, perhaps we can have a better view or a better sort of perspective on higher dimension. But in terms of like proving conclusively like these mechanisms that dude is talking about, I don't know. But sure, I don't see any problem with what dude's doing. I just don't know why the likes of David Weiss weren't more open to things like, I don't know, maybe not putting out his super lucrative app that cemented this sort of circling sun thing into the public psyche, sort of marrying that concept of the circling sun with flat Earth and getting very rich in the process. I don't know, man. It is just kind of suspect, right? But don't listen to me. This is all alleged in my opinion, and I'm just some crazy flurfer wearing a stupid hat. So what do I know?
All those things, and we know that the sun's not 93 million miles away. A ball of mainly helium gas in a near perfect vacuum. We know so many.
Here's my question. Why isn't this dude doing all those interviews that David Weiss did? Honestly, like, I've never seen this dude stuff, and maybe he wasn't around then, but really, like, who made, I don't know, man. Like, and I'm probably coming across as some kind of like jealous little girl or something, but I'm really not. Like, I feel very passionately about this topic. And when I see people, you know, promoted in the public eye, just totally fucking dismantling this thing, it is painful. But at least he's got that sad music going in the background, right?
Many different things that falsify the so-called heliocentric model. And so people say, well, it's not heliocentric, it's barycentric, whatever you want to call it. The model that we were all taught about, the wobbling, spinning, tilted space pair covered with water.
Exactly. He is right, though. The arguments and semantics by the globetards does get tiresome. So, like, the amount of caveats that we have to preface our statements with just so that we are not taken the wrong way and, you know, misrepresented gets tiresome.
Since birth, that is just pseudoscience nonsense is ridiculous. So I'm excited. I am glad that Austin and Jaron and Lise and the others went down there.
I wonder how much they paid him to say that. I'm totally kidding.
To do this, because now we know for sure. There's no more oh, well, this video is fake, this video is fake, it's edited here, it's edited there.
Yeah, but who was the one pushing that narrative into the movement? Ask yourself that question. I know who the fuck it was. It wasn't me. But what was I supposed to do? I've had a lot of people come to me saying, "Well, why didn't you stop them?" What? Like, who am I? Like, what? Let me go get my fucking, Captain America shield or something, right? Like, whatever, dude.
We know. And we know we have a 24-hour sun. It's my stance that the biblical model predicted it ahead of time. If it hadn't predicted it ahead of time, I wouldn't have been able to model it ahead of time based on the assumptions and depictions given to us in Scripture.
So is that really what we want to do, though, y'all? I'm sorry, but to model based on assumptions is it's folly. Maybe some things are better left as a mystery sometimes. But to all power to him. I hope that dude's endeavors yield many fruits. I really do. But to sit there and say you're excited about the attempted assassination of the flat Earth movement, it does make me question your actual. I don't know. I mean, David Weiss is playing your video, and he's the one that added the sad music, obviously. But I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm not excited about it. I am really quite sickened by it because Jared knows better. The evidence for the circling sun in the Antarctic as a potentiality has always been there. And the only people that were pushing heavily, those edited videos are the only ones that ended up going to Antarctica. And that Will Duffy character said in that one interview, I didn't pick up on it at the time, but he had like this good friend, this chick that was in his parish or whatever, that was a flat earther and still is a flat earther. But then in the same breath, he said he couldn't find any flat earthers that wanted to go to Antarctica. I know of several that were begging to go. So this whole thing was very deceptively put together. And like, I don't know. If I was to bet my money, which I don't bet, but I would bet that people were paid off. And I was warned about this kind of shit happening years ago. And people like Nathan Oakley have been trying to, maybe sort of abrasively at times, prevent this sort of shit from happening. So have I. But what can you do, right?
Scripture. So I'm excited. I'm humbled by that. Like, to me, it's humbling that the Creator would give me the revelation to do that and the wisdom to do that. I feel completely unworthy, but at the same time, I'm so grateful that He chose me to reveal these things. People can say whatever they want about that. I don't care.
I mean, yeah, amen to that, man, for real. And I'm glad you're doing that sort of thing too, brother. Not everybody can sort of put themselves out there. I mean, I think it's a little bit more socially acceptable now. I mean, you're not really going out on much of a limb now at this point. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't get any delusions of grandeur, But yeah, thank God. Thank God for the angels of revelation. Thank God for these times of revelation and apocalypse, for real. The unveiling was also prophesied in these ancient books. The great deception was foretold, and so was the unveiling. And, praise be to the Most High, Creator of all things.
The only person in the world that's done it, as far as I know, and that's not a cocky, arrogant thing. I'm the only person in the world that has taken a physical model and showed how the 24-hour sun, anti-motion 24-hour sun, can work in this model around the entire perimeter of what we call the Antarctic.
Right, but then you're going to have to start proving where's the base of the dome, right? I mean, I don't know. Like, more power to you. I've seen in sort of computer modeled situations with refraction as a data input, exactly what you're saying here. There's been videos done that I featured on as clips on previous videos. So I'm in 100% agreement with this dude. What I don't understand is why now, David Weiss, are you going to take your app down? Are you going to give everybody their money back? Did you sell their data? Did anybody die?
The Antarctic ice wall. If you're far enough south, you're going to see that circling sun apparent to your position, and its position in the sky above you is just going to be relative to where you are. So, flat Earth's not dead. You can't kill truth. The biblical model is the model because that.
No, flat Earth's not dead. The globe is dead. Like, you can't you can't resurrect the globe because of some shit that Jeranism did in Antarctica. And I really, you know, it would have been very nice to see two simultaneous experiments happen on opposite ends of Antarctica. That would have been very nice. But again, even this is all irrelevant, because with or without a model of the mechanisms of the heavens, the Earth is and always will be a stationary plane. All of the physical evidence, all practical experiments, and all common sense conclusively leans towards the Earth not being any sort of spinning ball. And so this effigy, this character assassination of this straw man of flat Earth is definitely not going to sway any diligent, self-assured flat earthers. But when it comes to the noobs to the topic, you know, this is gonna definitely set us back, or at least set people like Jaron back and David Weiss back quite a bit. So it is a lesson to be learned. You know, let's steer clear of these sorts of positive claims because they're not necessary. Like, we have no reason to be making positive claims about the mechanisms of the heavens. There's no use for it, at least in the discussion, you know, at least in a discussion trying to win souls over to the truth, right? This stuff is like masterclass, way deeper for the flurfur stuff, you know? I don't know, man. Let me know what y'all think down in the comments. If I'm being overly harsh on Jaron and David Weiss, let me know. Emotions are definitely high. You know, I saw this coming. Many of us tried to prevent this sort of, you know, painting ourselves into the corner with positive claims that are counterintuitive to the things that we know to be true. And Jaron knows way better than to make these sorts of positive claims that are definitely not realistic and also completely irrelevant to the conversation of flat Earth. I don't know, man. I just thought that Jaron knew better, and so the only conclusion that I can draw is either A, maybe he got kicked in the head by a donkey and he lost several points of intelligence, and he forgot a bunch of the shit that we talked about personally over the years, or maybe his bank account got much more swole. I don't know, bro. You tell me. I think that covers it, you guys. HS Dark says, with Jeranism in the sun was much stronger there, so why is it so cold? Oh, what's up, David Weiss? The Morgal, are you going to give me back the $300 you borrowed from me and said you would pay me back in 1 week after all the other donations I gave you? Take it out of your boat money, you fucking asshole. Take it, how about, I don't even know what $300 you're talking about, but take it out of your fucking boat money, dude. Damn, dude, bitter much? Why don't you go on your boat, dude, and fuck off?
Fine.
Yeah, I'm about to wrap it up.
You are,
Yeah.
when you get done.
Yeah. Well, someone just got unwrenched for sure. All right, y'all. Good on you. And yeah, you can take $300 and shove it up your fucking ass. How's that sound? All right, y'all be good. One love, you guys. Sorry, it's hard to edit on that. If you would like to support the channel, y'all got the links. It's all Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, the Morgile. And hit me up on text, 864-315-7892. One love, you guys. Y'all be good. More to come. And as always, Spread the word, spread the world, and peace out, you guys. Go boating or whatever it is you do with all that money.